Huizio raised his hand, his fingertips gently reaching toward the uncle's slightly trembling face. In the next second, he ignored the uncle's attempt to stop him. He forcibly pressed down the longing he had suppressed for so many years, even forcing his own voice to stay calm. "Wait here obediently for me. I'll be right back." Cha Taejiang stared blankly at his departing back. Only at this moment did he suddenly realize Huizio had become terrifyingly unfamiliar. No matter how many times Han Juwen called Cha Taejiang, he just couldn't get through. Before he could figure out why Cha Taejiang wasn't answering, a senior colleague who was with him called out to him. The other person actually wanted to introduce his daughter to him. Han Juwen rejected him outright with, "The age gap is too big." After finally seeing the senior off with great difficulty, Han Juwen could only sigh helplessly. He let out a helpless sigh. His headache wasn't something he could even put into words. All he could do was stare blankly at the text message on his phone. This time he stayed angry even longer than he'd expected. It seemed he was really furious. What should he do to get him to cool down? Just as the door opened, he was blocked in the doorway again. After hearing the two men's purpose, Han Juwen was stunned on the spot, but he didn't pay them any attention at all. He got straight into the car and sped off with a stomp on the accelerator. Yet those two sentences kept echoing in his head. His expression darkened to the extreme. "You know Cha Taejiang, right? Last Friday, there was a murder in the Incheon building. Cha Taejiang is the suspect in that case and is currently on the run." 7 years later, when they met again, the uncle was locked in a room by the very kid he had raised. Huizio was even so rough that he forcibly stuffed food into Cha Taejiang's mouth. He had plotted for a full 7 years and would never let him go, because that child who had once knelt by the uncle's feet and cried had already died 7 years ago. Upon learning that Cha Taejiang had become a wanted suspect, Han Juwen rushed to his residence at once. When the password hint showed as incorrect, he cursed under his breath, "Damn it." Yet his fingertips were trembling uncontrollably. He was afraid that the scene from 7 years ago would repeat itself. His mind was filled with the image of Cha Taejiang covered in blood. His pupils suddenly contracted. At last, the password was correct. He pushed the door open and rushed in, calling out in a taut voice, "Taejiang!" But the room was completely empty. The worry on Han Juwen's face only deepened. The ankle chain Huizio had prepared for Cha Taejiang was very long. So long that it was enough for him to move freely around the room, with delicacies and red wine laid out before him. Yet Cha Taejiang did not move at all. His heart was choked with a heap of questions. "Are you still alive?" Huizio shot him a cold glance. He sat down, his tone full of mockery. "What? You thought I was dead. And now that you've found out I'm still alive, you're very disappointed." "Misunderstood." Cha Taejiang hurried to explain, his voice a little flustered. "What are you talking about? It's not like that. These past 7 years, where on earth have you been these 7 years? Have you been doing well? I just haven't seen you for so long that I really got scared just now. Where is this exactly? Why did you tie me up?" Huizio slowly sipped his red wine, as if lamenting how fast time had passed. Cha Taejiang, however, was in no mood to listen to any of that. He just wanted an answer. Only then did Huizio slowly raise his head, his gaze passing over him to look out the window. "This is my villa. You've seen it yourself. There's nothing but forest all around. Almost no one ever comes here, so you'd better give up any idea of escaping." Shock was written all over Cha Taejiang's face. "What is this supposed to be? Are you planning to keep me locked up here forever?" Huizio's silence was the most direct answer. Cha Taejiang immediately panicked. "Are you insane? This is a crime. If I disappear for a few more days, someone will report me missing. You think the police won't find this place? If you get caught on the spot, even I won't be able to save you." But the only response he got was still silence. Cha Taejiang couldn't figure it out. Why on earth was Huizio doing this? It was as if something suddenly occurred to him. He jerked his head up to look at Huizio. Could it be because of what happened 7 years ago? Is that why you've become like this? Are you taking revenge on me? Huizio let out a mocking scoff. "Revenge? So that's why you were so shocked to see I'm still alive. You thought I came to settle the score with you." Cha Taejiang's hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I only hoped you could forget all of that and just go live your life well." But Huizio misheard that sentence as, "You just want to put your own mind at ease." Cha Taejiang wanted to explain, but in the end he still lowered his head. "Fine, think whatever you want. Unlock the chains right now. I can act like nothing ever happened." What answered him was still silence. "Guan Huizio, did you hear me? Before I regret it." Huizio sounded like he had completely run out of patience. "How long are you going to keep saying this boring stuff? Stop saying these annoying things. Eat first. Aren't you hungry?" That line directly ignited Cha Taejiang's temper. "I'm not eating. I don't want to eat food given by someone who locked me up." Huizio just stared at him coldly, not a trace of warmth in his eyes. Then he stood up and, pressing down his voice, tossed out a line. "Then there's nothing I can do." Cha Taejeong's face was full of confusion. He saw Huizio grab the pomegranate with one hand. The next second, he suddenly pinched Cha Taejeong's chin and forced the pomegranate into his mouth. Right after that, Cha Taejeong's whole body was pushed down to the floor. Cha Taejeong struggled desperately, but Huizio's strength was like iron. He couldn't overpower him at all. The way he resisted made Huizio's eyes clearly contract for a moment. Cha Taejeong clutched his wrist in a death grip. His eyes were filled with tightly restrained fury. Huizio, however, just let out a sneer. "Is that all the strength you've got?" With open provocation, he leaned in close to Cha Taejeong's ear and whispered, "Can you bite a finger off? If you really want to shake me off, then use a little more strength. Only when you force me to bleed will it count." Cha Taejeong's tears were on the verge of spilling over. For a second, Huizio actually froze. The next moment, he directly pressed his finger between Cha Taejeong's teeth. Seeing that Cha Taejeong still wouldn't bite down, Huizio finally straightened up and gave a light cough. "Give it up. You're not getting away. No matter what you do, I won't let you go." The kid who used to lie at your feet crying died 7 years ago. In order to have Uncle all to himself, Huizio had spent 7 whole years setting up this imprisonment. This entire villa was custom-built for the sole purpose of caging Uncle in. Even if Cha Taejeong used all his strength to smash the table against the glass, he still couldn't so much as scratch it. What was even more terrifying, he had absolutely no idea where this place was. It was like a villa buried deep in the mountains. Ever since yesterday, not a single passerby had appeared, and it was far too quiet, as if cut off from the rest of the world. Even if Cha Taejeong managed to break free of the chains, relying on himself alone, he still wouldn't be able to get out. The best way would be to seek help from the outside world, but even after he turned the entire second floor upside down, he still couldn't find a phone. The shackle on his ankle was very long enough for him to move about the whole second floor. There's no way a place like this wouldn't have communication devices. Cha Taejeong guessed the phone was probably on the first floor, so he could only think of a way to get Huizio to unlock his handcuffs. While Huizio was out, Cha Taejeong decided to search the second floor again first. Little did he know, his every tiny movement was seen clearly by Huizio, like 360-degree surveillance with no blind spots. Huizio just sat quietly in the car like that, his gaze nailed to the surveillance screen. When they got home, Cha Taejeong spoke first. "I want to wash up." Huizio merely glanced at him. "You don't just want to wash up, you also want to change clothes. Did you hear that? I haven't washed up since yesterday. I'm really uncomfortable." The moment Huizio pulled open the drawer, Cha Taejeong instinctively shrank back. Inside lay a collar with a chain and a lock. Before Cha Taejeong had time to resist, it was directly fastened around his neck. Right after that, the shackle on his foot was unlocked. Huizio's fingertip brushed over that chain. "Is this good enough? Go wash. I'll get you some clothes." Cha Taejeong was very dissatisfied with this outcome, but he had no choice, so in the end he still forced his emotions down and chose to obey Huizio. "Got it, I'll do as you say." Seeing right through his thoughts, Huizio kept staring at him without saying a single word. Cha Taejeong, on the contrary, cooperated almost too much. "I don't know whether what you want is revenge or something else, but I'll obediently stay here until you undo this." Crushed by that gaze to the point he couldn't breathe, Cha Taejeong still braced himself, wanting Huizio to take off the collar. "What is this supposed to be? It's not like I'm some animal. I won't run away, at least let me look like a human being." Only then did Huizio step closer, pressing in on him. "Are you sure you're going to stay here obediently until I'm no longer angry?" Cha Taejeong flinched on instinct and backed away. "Yes," but Huizio came right up to him. "What if I never calm down? Then are you going to stay here and be with me forever?" Cha Taejeong was clearly stunned, and Huizio couldn't help letting out a mocking, derisive laugh. "What's there to be surprised about? Exactly. Why say such a flimsy lie that falls apart the moment you hear it?" Unexpectedly, Cha Taejeong actually nodded and agreed. "As long as you're willing, I'll live here forever." As soon as he said that, Huizio froze on the spot. He remembered that 7 years ago, Cha Taejeong had made the same promise, that he wouldn't abandon him, that he would always stay by his side. Huizio suddenly threw his arms around him. His heart instantly filled up, so happy he couldn't contain it and even let out a laugh. Cha Taejeong was even more bewildered, and Huizio buried his face in his shoulder. He was so happy that he actually felt a bit speechless about it. But Cha Taejeong wanted to push him away. He couldn't explain why, only that his instinct was to first put some distance between them. The next second, however, Huizio directly grabbed hold of his wrist. "What are you suddenly trying to do now?" That grab instantly ignited Huizio's temper. and his gaze turned frighteningly dark. Cha Taejeong was so scared that his whole body trembled. His eyes darted around in panic, trying to avoid looking. Cha Taejeong turned around and bolted for the door. But with one swift stride, Huizio caught up to him. After reaching adulthood, Huizio was indeed a lot stronger. The 36-year-old Ajushi, on the other hand, only looked more fragile, as if he were even younger than 7 years ago. He was being kept under soft confinement by Huizio while at the same time being treated as a fugitive suspect. All because the deceased was Jong Inbyum, who had once blackmailed Huizio's mother. Jong Inbyum had only just been released from prison for a major theft charge a month ago. Now the corpse had been burned to a crisp, and the real cause of death still had to be determined by autopsy. What made things even more troublesome was that Cha Taejeong had spoken with him on the phone right before he died. As soon as the incident happened, Cha Taejeong was immediately placed under soft confinement by Huizio, and the team leader in charge of this case just so happened to be Cha Yunsong. The moment she heard the 3 syllables, Cha Taejeong, she visibly froze. Who? The team member, looking completely confused, repeated it once more. Han Juin also arrived at this moment, but was blocked outside and could only helplessly shout toward Cha Yunsong. I am Cha Taejeong's attorney. Taejeong didn't run away, he's missing. Cha Yunsong only gave him a faint glance. Then he signaled the team members to continue their report, but Han Juin, as if losing control, went crazy searching for Cha Taejeong. On the other end of the line, there was always the same sentence. The call cannot be connected for the moment. Taejeong, where on earth are you? At this moment, in the quiet villa. It's not convenient to talk here, so let's skip 10,000 words first. It was not until late at night that the Ajusi finally sobered up, and he didn't even remember when he had fallen asleep. He suddenly realized that someone was holding his waist from behind. You're awake, aren't you? Take your hand away. Seeing that Huizio still didn't move, didn't you hear me? Move away. Huizio didn't even spare him a glance. Ajusi, did you really think I brought you here to get revenge? Cha Taejeong was at a loss for words. You think I did this because I hate you? So I want to torment you? Cha Taejeong lowered his voice and countered. If not, then what? Why are you doing this? Doing this? It won't make you happy either. Huizio stared straight at him. It's very quiet here, isn't it? In a forest like this, there's no noise and no lights. No matter what happens outside, nothing here will ever change. It will always be this quiet, sometimes so quiet that it feels like another world. When night falls, I can't even tell whether I'm in this life or if I've already reached the next. That feeling is very comforting. It can press down the restlessness in my heart, but occasionally, it also makes you taste that kind of unbearable loneliness. It makes me feel like the whole world has pushed me away, like a seed lost in the desert that went the wrong way and fell into a world that doesn't belong to me. Uncle, have you ever felt that way? Huizio's line, I want to be saved, made Cha Taejeong freeze all over. Only then did he realize that he had always been trapped by his own prejudice against Huizio. Huizio had put it very bluntly, what I want is not revenge. That kind of thing doesn't mean much to me. Before he could finish, Huizio let go of him. And then, just like that, fell asleep right in front of Uncle. Cha Taejeong was in turmoil, staring at his sleeping face, with shock still lingering in his eyes. Hide Uncle away, and leave only the 2 of us. This was the result that Huizio came up with after 7 years of advanced study in Germany. It could both make someone his possession and drive his love rival to madness. Locked up in the villa, Cha Taejeong didn't even know how many days had passed. They must be looking for me, right? Dyuan has probably already gone crazy looking for him. Cha Taejeong secretly sneaked a glance at Huizio, thinking about how to get out of here as soon as possible. Huizio's hand, which was flipping through the book, suddenly paused, and his voice turned cold. Your gaze is about to see right through me. Why do you keep staring at me? What do you want to say? If you want to say it, just say it. Cha Taejeong was startled, and had just opened his mouth when he was cut off. If you want me to let you go, then don't say it. Saying it won't help. Cha Taejeong switched to a softer tone. Have you been doing well during this time? This show of concern clearly made Huizio freeze for a moment. Cha Taejeong told him, 7 years ago, I tried to look for you, but I just couldn't find you anywhere. Do you still keep in touch with your aunt? Don't you go to work? Where did this place come from? Anyway, you're not doing dangerous things again, are you? Cha Taejeong fired off a string of questions in one breath. Huizio came back to his senses and let out a cold laugh. So it really wasn't a dream. I must have said something in my sleep yesterday, right? Uncle, are you afraid that while you were gone, I suffered a lot? Thank you for worrying about me so much, but everything has gone much more smoothly than you imagine, Uncle. As for the nonsense I mumbled in my sleep last night, don't take it to heart. it was all rubbish. Seeing that he was doing well, Cha Taejeong was genuinely happy for him. But Huizio turned it around and asked him instead, "How have you been?" Cha Taejeong only said, "Pretty uneventful." Huizio tugged at the corner of his mouth. "That would be great. You've been staring out the window this whole time. Do you really want to go out that badly?" Cha Taejeong thought this was a test and could only deny it against his true feelings. But in the next second, Huizio directly grabbed hold of the other end of the chain. "It's a bit chilly outside, but the sunlight is pretty nice. Do you want to go out for a walk?" Being taken aback by how proactive he was, Cha Taejeong froze on the spot. Meanwhile, Han Juwon had almost finished turning Cha Taejeong's place upside down. The room was so empty it was frightening, which only made him more anxious. He walked into the living room and realized the clothes weren't even packed, and the person had already left. Han Juwon put Cha Taejeong's clothes into the wardrobe one piece at a time, but he unexpectedly touched a box. Inside the box was a bow and arrows, and Han Juwon's thoughts were instantly pulled back to the first time they met. Back in high school, Han Juwon had been very rebellious, but Cha Taejeong had been so quiet it was like he was invisible, the kind of model student who did nothing but study. Han Juwon couldn't muster the slightest interest in him, until that rainy day when Han Juwon hadn't brought an umbrella. Yet at the corner, he saw Cha Taejeong standing in the rain practicing archery. Every arrow hit a perfect 10 ring. In that moment, the confident Cha Taejeong looked like he was glowing. Han Juwon was stunned on the spot. As Cha Taejeong's gaze dropped onto him, he instinctively dodged, making it look like he'd been secretly staring. But he still couldn't help himself and snuck another glance at Cha Taejeong. It was incredible. He was like a completely different person from the one in the classroom. It really caught people off guard. In front, Huizio's biological mom was staring at them, and behind, Huizio was slowly walking while holding the uncle's hand. But the person the uncle accidentally provoked wasn't just Huizio. Because of that one shot in the rain back in high school, Han Juwon completely fell. He even joined the archery club, which he had absolutely no interest in, just for Cha Taejeong. Since he had zero foundation, Han Juwon was so nervous that his hands went stiff just trying to draw the bow. Yet a bunch of students nearby were eagerly waiting for him to demonstrate teaching. The teacher suddenly had a bright idea and directly called on Cha Taejeong to teach him the basics. Being guided hand in hand by the person he liked only doubled Han Juwon's original nervousness. His heart was beating so fast it felt like it would explode, and his body grew even more rigid. Back then he didn't understand why he was like that and just thought he was too tired. By the end of the class, Han Juwon's legs had already started to shake. Later on, even his arms had no strength left in them. The moment when he was so aggrieved he wanted to cry was exactly when Cha Taejeong walked in on him. "What's your name?" When Cha Taejeong asked, Han Juwon was directly stunned. He actually couldn't remember his own name for a moment. The moment he reported his name, Cha Taejeong gave him a bright smile. "I didn't expect you to be this determined. I see you in a new light." Han Juwon was still in a daze. "Remember to stretch well when you get home. See you tomorrow." The haze in Han Juwon's heart was swept away by this word of encouragement. "It feels like I've decided which path I want to take in the future." And at this moment, Cha Taejeong finally drew in a long absent breath of fresh air. Huizio's hands suddenly came to rest on him, and Cha Taejeong glanced sideways at him for a moment. "It's a bit hot," but Huizio acted as if he didn't catch the hint. "Don't like it? Then shall we go back?" Cha Taejeong simply strode forward, forcibly steering the conversation away. "How on earth did you manage to find a place like this?" But Huizio's answer made him pause slightly. The house was actually built by Huizio himself. Cha Taejeong had thought Huizio was in construction, but it turned out he only put up the money and commissioned others to build according to his specifications. Huizio saw right through the older man's thoughts at a glance and said coolly, "You're this curious about what kind of work I'm doing now? Are you wondering what a guy who once had nothing relies on to earn this much money?" Cha Taejeong did not deny it. He only pressed down his emotions and said, "I just think that if you have the money to build a house like this, at the very least you're not doing badly, and you should be able to go meet some new friends. If you travel somewhere else, there are so many things you can do. So I don't understand why you insist on staying here locked in a stalemate with me. You put the shackle on your own foot, but that means you've locked yourself here as well." Huizio did not think that having money was a prerequisite for happiness. "Ajushi, you're more vulgar than I imagined." Cha Taejeong, however, was very realistic. He was a prosecutor, he wasn't short of money, but he wasn't so rich that he could casually build this kind of villa. But what Huizio couldn't understand even more was, why would he spend the money on himself? "I just feel that this is what I ought to do." Huizio stared at him and shot back, "Why? Do you feel guilty toward my mom?" But Cha Taejeong's answer left Huizio stunned on the spot. "Because I once saved you, and on the day Teacher Chun passed away, I still secretly went to her funeral. Back then, I hadn't yet thought about sponsoring you, but you were kneeling in front of the teacher's spirit, crying and begging her to take you away. It was only in that moment that I understood saving someone doesn't end with pulling them back from death. That's why I meddled a bit more. It's just that I dragged this matter on for a long time. I wasn't trying to give you some huge amount of financial aid. It's just, I went through all that trouble to save you, and if you were to die a second time, it would be such a waste. Huizio was silent for a long time before finally speaking. If you could go back to that day, would you still save me? Cha Taejiang didn't hesitate. I think he will. Even if Huizio locked him up here, being alive was still better than being dead. Whether it was getting angry or forgiving anything, there was still a chance to do it. Huizio was pricked by those words. Uncle, with a personality this weak, you're going to ruin your own life sooner or later. Cha Taejiang flared up. I know that too. Okay, but what does it matter to you whether my life turns out good or bad? Huizio suddenly threw his arms around him, pressing right down on the lower back the uncle had injured last night. In the instant he was pushed away, his face was full of hurt, and he turned around and left. Later, when they were cooking together, he noticed again that the uncle's hand had been cut. Huizio was scared stiff on the spot, frozen where he stood. That conversation outside the villa had made Huizio feel that the uncle had never really changed. But Cha Taejiang still hadn't answered his question. Instead, he took the initiative to pull Huizio into his arms. The next second, a sharp pain suddenly shot through his waist. Cha Taejiang almost instinctively pushed Huizio away. Huizio didn't even lift his head. He only bowed it lower, his voice sinking. It's getting dark, let's go back. Cha Taejiang stared helplessly at his departing back, like a child who had done something wrong. Because he zoned out at the family gathering, Han Juin drew someone's attention. The clan brother Han Yangjin brought up Cha Taejiang, his tone so sharp it felt icy. Huh? Don't tell me you mean that guy who killed someone and then went on the run out of guilt. The news and the papers are all reporting it. The rumors are everywhere. He's completely disgraced the family. What did I say before? Someone that uneducated and uncultured is bound to cause serious trouble sooner or later. Han Juin's face darkened, and he shot back immediately. He's the best student, the most outstanding person I've ever met. Taejiang was always ranked first in the entire school in high school, and even got a full scholarship in college. He's never been inferior, always humble and honest. And at the very least, he wouldn't slander people behind their backs the way you do. Seeing that the two were about to start a fight, the situation was forcibly suppressed only when grandfather finally spoke up. Han Juin could hardly eat a bite of that meal. He didn't even give grandfather face and stood up to leave in front of everyone. When he got home, however, he was stopped by Han Husu. Han Juin only glanced at her and spoke in a very flat voice. Sorry, I'll listen to your lecture next time. But Han Husu pulled him into a hug, her tone full of worry, though what she brought up was still about Cha Taejiang. Han Juin asked her back, very bluntly, do you believe in Cha Taejiang? With the gentleness of a loving mother on her lips, Han Husu comforted him. He could never do something like that. We should trust him, shouldn't we? Taejiang will be fine. As soon as Han Juin left, her expression instantly darkened, turning eerily cold. Meanwhile, back at the villa, Huizio was taking the initiative to cook for the uncle. Cha Taejiang still had that sentence from the woods stuck in his head. He'd said, I'm the same as before. Did that mean he wanted to go back to the past? It wasn't until Huizio's voice came from the kitchen. How about pasta for dinner? That Cha Taejiang suddenly snapped back to reality. He couldn't help growing curious about Huizio's cooking skills. Where did you learn to cook? Huizio turned his head slightly and gave him a cool sideways glance. When I was little, before my mom got sick, no matter how busy she was, she would still cook with me once a week. I was too young back then and basically messed it up every time, but I was really happy during that period. Cooking makes you really feel, I'm doing something for someone else. But in the end, I was the only one left. It was as if that sentence pricked Cha Taejiang. His gaze visibly softened. He fell silent for a few seconds, then directly said he wanted to help. But Huizio snatched the kitchen knife out of his hand. Forget it. People who never even step into the kitchen usually shouldn't butt in. Don't make things harder by trying to help. Sit. Cha Taejiang clearly refused to admit his cooking was bad, but Huizio still forcibly pushed him back to rest. And in the very next second, the knife slipped, cutting right into his finger. Cha Taejiang let out a muffled groan of pain and complained in a low voice. I already said I'd help you, why do you have to? Before he could finish, he looked up and, seeing Huizio's face, froze on the spot. The uncle who had been so forceful just now suddenly flushed like a young boy, but it wasn't shyness. He was trying hard to soothe the dazed, frightened Huizio. In fact, Cha Taejeong's fingertip was only slightly scratched, but Huizio reacted as if he had seen something terrifying and threw out every knife in the villa. Cha Taejeong stiffened where he stood. "What are you doing? Didn't you hear me talking? Why are you throwing them all away?" He reached out, wanting to touch Huizio, but in Huizio's gaze there was only that wound. His pupils suddenly constricted. The next second, almost by reflex, he forcefully shook off Cha Taejeong's outstretched hand. All that remained on his face was sheer terror. Cha Taejeong couldn't understand at all. He raised his hand, gesturing as he explained, "Cutting your hand while cooking is totally normal. Cutting your hand while cooking is totally normal. Look, it's not even that deep." As he spoke, he showed the wound, and Huizio's heart lurched in fright again. Huizio forced himself to calm down. He grabbed Cha Taejeong in one swift motion and went straight to bandage him. Cha Taejeong stared at his finger, which had been wrapped up completely, and was stunned with shock. "Isn't this way too over the top?" Huizio even wanted to wrap up his entire hand. Cha Taejeong suddenly caught sight of the wound in Huizio's palm. "When did you get it cut up like this?" Huizio was still a little dazed. Even he himself hadn't noticed these cuts. Cha Taejeong grabbed his hand and started bandaging it for him, but Huizio kept staring at him in a trance. "Cha Taejeong, come here." Huizio didn't look away, so Cha Taejeong had no choice but to move closer. He then hastily lowered his head in a panic. In the end, the two people who were both injured reached an agreement to eat instant noodles, but Cha Taejeong's eating habits still made Huizio very annoyed. Huizio had been unusually quiet since just now, and Cha Taejeong wasn't sure whether Huizio was angry, yet the look on Huizio's face was abnormally dark. Cha Taejeong suddenly remembered how, when he was a child, he learned to cook by following his mother, just to experience the happiness of cooking for someone you like. Thinking of that, he finally voiced his own tastes. "Actually, I don't really like pasta. That kind of Western food doesn't really suit my palate. Instant noodles with kimchi are better." Huizio was clearly stunned. "You've never said that before." Cha Taejeong also stiffened. "Well, you can't really complain to the person who cooked, right? Whatever gets brought to the table, you just eat it." This sentence only made Huizio feel even worse. "I thought I knew you so well, yet I don't even know something this small." Cha Taejeong had originally wanted to bring the mood back, but unexpectedly, Huizio became even more dejected. Still, he softly said thanks, as if forcibly pressing his emotions down. "Looks like you really care about what I said, but don't take it to heart. All of that was from when we were kids." With his thoughts laid bare, the tips of Cha Taejeong's ears burned. Face flushed, he stared at Huizio. It was strange, Huizio was still the same as before. If this weren't a villa in the mountains, if he himself weren't being confined, then in that instant it would have felt exactly like some night 7 years ago when they had dinner together. As if no rift had ever appeared between him and Huizio, as if they had always lived together. Maybe he had already missed his chance long ago, but Huizio had changed. Their relationship had already been severed. If he hadn't noticed that trace of innocence in Huizio's heart, maybe he wouldn't have wavered. While Cha Taejeong was still lost in thought, Huizio suddenly leaned down, coming even closer. Cha Taejeong raised his hand and pushed him away. Huizio's disappointment was almost impossible to hide. Yet, in the very next second, Cha Taejeong grabbed Huizio's collar in one swift motion. The one who had leaned in first was that uncle, but in the end, the one who pushed Huizio away was still him. Listening to Huizio's aggrieved accusation, the chained Cha Taejeong realized for the first time, it seemed that the person truly holding the other end of the chain was himself. Han Juin still had not given up on finding the missing Cha Taejeong. He had searched every possible place. This was a place Taejeong had come to before he disappeared. The police had already withdrawn. It was also where Jong Inbyum's corpse had been found. Why did Taejeong just have to come here that day? Only at this moment did Han Juin realize that he actually knew almost nothing about Cha Taejeong. He tried dialing Cha Taejeong's number, but what he heard was still no one answering. Han Juin was nearly at a dead end, but he did not want to admit defeat just like this. He forced himself to calm down and desperately tried to recall places Cha Taejeong might go. Suddenly, someone called out to him from behind. Han Juin frowned and turned back, staring at the newcomer. "Who are you?" Cha Yunsong's face showed no emotion. "I'm Captain Cha Yunsong, in charge of investigating the Jong Inbyum murder case. May I have a word with you?" At that moment, the originally ambiguous villa also turned cold in an instant because of Huizio's grievance. "Is it fun to toy with me? I let you do whatever you want with me. Do you think that's amusing?" He was pushed away directly, and for a moment Cha Taejeong didn't know how to explain. while Huizio complained like a child. "You're really the worst, you know that? I hate you." Cha Taejeong froze on the spot, completely at a loss. It was that same familiar illusion again. Clearly he was the one tied up, so why did it feel like the control was actually in his own hands? That's impossible. How could this be happening? He forced down his racing heart. "Calm down first." Cha Taejeong met Huizio's shocked gaze head-on. He slowly unbuttoned the collar of Huizio's shirt. "You're too hasty with everything you do. You have to learn to slow down." But once Huizio quieted down, Cha Taejeong instead became inexplicably nervous. 10,000 words are omitted here. Just a second ago, the middle-aged man had taken the initiative to throw himself into his arms. The next second, after seeing the news, he planned to sneak away. The one who was going to lose his mind this time was definitely Huizio. The death of Jong In-beom had not yet been fully investigated, but the police had already made public that Cha Taejeong was a suspect. Although Cha Yun-song didn't really like Cha Taejeong, she believed there was absolutely no way he could be the murderer. But the higher UPS used another case as a pretext and reassigned all of Cha Yun-song's team members. In the end, she decided to pursue this case to the very end on her own. Han Ju-won did not know Cha Yun-song. He even thought Cha Yun-song was here to handle the case. But the first thing she said was, "You still can't get in touch with Mr. Cha Taejeong, can you?" This sentence left Han Ju-won stunned on the spot. He had thought that Cha Yun-song had been watching him all this time. Unhurriedly, Cha Yun-song explained, "Please don't misunderstand. To prevent anyone from sheltering a suspect, the police will naturally keep an eye on people connected to the suspect." Han Ju-won clenched his teeth. "Taejeong is not the criminal, and I have no reason to hide him. If you're only going to ask that, then I'll be going." Cha Yun-song admitted directly, "I also don't think Cha Taejeong is the murderer. I had a bit of contact with him before, and he really isn't much of a person. But I know he's not that kind of person." There was steadiness and confidence in Cha Yun-song's gaze. "I'm not interested in decoys used to divert attention. I only want to catch the real killer." In the villa, sunlight had already spilled into the room, and when Huizio came out after taking a shower, he looked around. The old man was actually still lazing in bed. Still not getting up? He needed to hurry and go take a shower. Cha Taejeong didn't want to move at all and mumbled vaguely, "Let me sleep a bit longer." Huizio propped his chin on his hand, his fingertips lightly twirling a lock of Taejeong's hair. His tone was light and a bit doting. "How did your stamina get this bad?" Cha Taejeong pushed back in dissatisfaction. "How many times do I have to tell you? It's that your stamina is too good." Huizio felt like he hadn't even done that much. "I've already learned to try really hard to hold back. I did everything right and you still won't give me a reward. What a lousy teacher." As he spoke, Huizio's fingers traced along those crisscrossing scars of his, lightly sweeping over his back. But Cha Taejeong suddenly caught his wrist. "That won't do. You have to listen to your teacher." The blushing uncle was like a willful child, insisting that Huizio be a good boy. Huizio stared at his face and just went blank. Cha Taejeong even thought that his words had actually worked. In his astonishment, Huizio still managed to speak, face flushed. "If you behave, will the teacher give me a reward?" That burning gaze on him made Cha Taejeong a little uncomfortable. "I'll think about it. What do you want?" Huizio pressed his lips lightly to his forehead. "This, you figure it out yourself." With that, he turned straight around and walked off. "Get up. After you shower, we'll eat together." Only then did Cha Taejeong let out a breath. It really wasn't easy. Still, doing this had indeed made him much more obedient. But how long did he have to keep up the act? He got up, only to realize there was still a chain locked around his ankle. Cha Taejeong frowned in displeasure. Lu supported his aching lower back as he crawled into the bedroom, pressing down his voice in his heart. "Take it slow. Stimulating him too early will only make it harder to get away." After finishing his shower and coming out, Cha Taejeong did not see Huizio. He only found out that Huizio had gone out to buy ingredients when he saw the sticky note on the table. As expected, there was nothing left in the fridge but water. He suddenly caught sight of the knife that Huizio had thrown away at the time. He unwrapped the package and, no matter how he thought about it, he could not understand why did Huizio want to throw these away. The knife was wrapped in a newspaper. The content on it made Cha Taejeong's pupils suddenly contract. He actually became a suspect in the shooting of Jong In-beom. The middle-aged man Cha Taejeong, with his pampered wife energy, is no match at all for the little lecher Huizio. It was clearly just a tiny game where they asked each other questions, yet Huizio managed to grill him until his whole face was burning. In the end, he even let Huizio eat and take his fill, totally not a loss for Huizio. Cha Taejeong thought back to the night before he lost consciousness. He had clearly been making a deal with Jong In-beom, but right after he got the USB drive, he was knocked out the next second. His fingertips rubbed the apple as he thought, But no matter how he tried, he just couldn't figure it out. In that report just now, the hat in the photo was clearly Jong In-beom's. But before he passed out, Jong In-beom had obviously still been alive, which means that before he lost consciousness, Hwizio's voice suddenly cut in, startling Cha Taejeong into a shiver. "You can't focus, can you? Is the movie that boring? You've been staring at the apple this whole time. Do you want to eat it? Want me to peel it for you?" Only then did Cha Taejeong hurriedly start peeling. "And no need. Your hand isn't healed yet. I can do it myself." But no matter how he tried, he couldn't keep the peel unbroken. And on top of that, Hwizio's teasing was blunt to the point of death. "At this rate, you should be able to eat it by tomorrow." Cha Taejeong, face flushed, told him to shut up, but his heart simply wouldn't calm down, and every time he peeled, the skin snapped. Hwizio always seemed able to see right through him. "How about we play a game? We ask each other questions and answer each other in turn. The answers can only be yes or no. As for whether you tell the truth or lie, that's up to the person answering. But when the game ends, you have to drink as many glasses as the number of lies you told." Cha Taejeong looked at the red wine in his hand, thought of all the questions buried in his heart, and agreed almost without hesitation. "Okay, can I go first?" The corner of Hwizio's mouth lifted. "So proactive, how rare. What exactly are you so curious about me?" Cha Taejeong barely paused before pressing on. "That time I passed out in the abandoned factory? Were you there too?" Hwizio had only just replied yes, when Cha Taejeong could no longer hold back. "Then why were you?" But Hwizio cut him off unhurriedly. "One question is finished, now it's my turn. In the past 7 years, have you often thought about me?" Cha Taejeong froze for a moment. Then he lowered his head, the tips of his ears burning, and gave a soft That answer clearly put Hwizio in a better mood. "Wow, really? Then how badly did you miss me?" Cha Taejeong moved in on him, face flushed. "Don't break the rules. That day you knew I was with Jong In-beom in the abandoned factory. So that's why you came." Hwizio's eyes reddened and his gaze grew more intent. "No. Have you ever thought about me while doing bad things?" Cha Taejeong was just about to flare up in embarrassed anger when Hwizio forcibly held him back with a single line. "Follow the rules of the game." His face flushed as if he had been boiled, and finally, under Hwizio's searing gaze, he guiltily squeezed out a line. "No." Hwizio became even more delighted. "Really?" Cha Taejeong glared back at him irritably. "I already said no cheating. Now it's my turn to ask. That day in the abandoned factory, were you the one who killed Jong In-beom?" Hwizio visibly jolted. Why would he ask that? But when he met Cha Taejeong's eyes, wound tight with nervousness, he finally only replied, "No." Cha Taejeong visibly let out a sigh of relief. "Really?" However, Hwizio immediately threw out the next question. "Have you ever thought about killing me?" Cha Taejeong was stunned, as if he had never expected it. What kind of question is that supposed to be? But that rhetorical question of his instead made Hwizio's heart sink. "So, you think that way too, don't you?" It wasn't until Cha Taejeong answered no, with almost no hesitation, that Hwizio tugged at the corner of his mouth in something like self-mockery. But Cha Taejeong cared even more about this. "Then do you really not want revenge at all?" Hwizio didn't even pause. "Right? Last question, uncle. Do you trust me?" Cha Taejeong stared at the unusually serious look on Hwizio's face, stunned for half a second. Then, after hesitating, he still nodded. He had to admit, Hwizio understood him too well, always able to see through his thoughts at a glance. So should they just stop here? "Then the old man drinks first, based on the number of lies told." Cha Taejeong reached out, picked up the glass of liquor beside him, and downed it decisively. He knocked back 2 glasses in one go and muttered under his breath, "Your turn." Hwizio unhurriedly poured himself a drink. With a faint smile at the corner of his lips, he swallowed it down with the side dishes as if he were drinking a soft drink. Just as the liquor hit the bottom of the glass, Cha Taejeong panicked and grabbed his wrist. "What did you lie about? The game is already over." When Hwizio didn't speak, Cha Taejeong refused to loosen his grip. "Answer me. What exactly did you lie about? Was Jong In-beom really killed by you?" Hwizio glanced sideways at him, his voice very soft. "That's against the rules." But seeing the dazed look on the old man's face, Hwizio did something unprecedented and answered, "I wasn't the one who killed him." Cha Taejeong was still flustered, as if trying to confirm whether he had misheard, asking over and over if it was true. "Didn't you say you believed me?" Hwizio countered, leaving Cha Taejeong momentarily stunned. Finally, Cha Taejeong lowered his eyes and said sullenly, "Fine, so that means the one time you lied was..." Hwizio stared straight at his face and complained resentfully, "You even want to know that? You yourself lied twice. That's way too sly. About how you never thought of me doing anything bad. Was that a lie too? Cha Taejeong's face instantly flushed red, and he tried to argue back, completely tongue-tied. But he accidentally stepped on Huizio's hand that was wrapped in bandages. The smile at the corner of Huizio's lips couldn't be held back no matter what. You lied, didn't you? Cha Taejeong shut his eyes and refused to answer no matter what. But while he was dodging, Huizio took the chance to wrap an arm around his waist. Cha Taejeong's throat tightened, and he couldn't get even half a word out. Secretly get the uncle drunk, then coax the uncle into leaving teeth marks on his body. And Huizio, only a little tipsy, raised his brows lightly. You're done already? I thought you could really hold your liquor. Your tolerance is even worse than I thought. Cha Taejeong's face burned red hot, and he reached out to snatch away his wine glass. With just a light press, Huizio pinned him down, but Cha Taejeong, far from fooling around, was actually stopping him from drinking more. Huizio paused. Why? Cha Taejeong was still trying to grab that wine glass. I'm fine, but you shouldn't drink anymore. The injury on your hand hasn't healed yet. Drinking will make it worse. Huizio hadn't expected him to care about this, and Cha Taejeong admitted it openly. Huizio's voice suddenly softened. Compared to the injuries on your back, Uncle, this is nothing. You could say I brought this on myself, right? Huizio touched the scar on Cha Taejeong's back with aching tenderness. All these wounds are because of me. You must have been in so much pain back then. Then I have to hurt this much too, for it to be fair, don't you think? Cha Taejeong suddenly got a little angry. What do you take yourself for? What right do you have to hurt it? As he spoke, he willfully started wiping off Huizio's injured hand for him. This is the body I fought so hard, for so long, to protect. What right do you have to hurt it without my permission? A flash of disbelief passed through Huizio's eyes, yet he couldn't hide the trace of delight in his tone. Do I belong to you? Do I belong to you? Cha Taejeong was clearly stunned. No, why would you say that? Seeing him deny it, Huizio became even more certain he must be drunk. He stared at him, and as he stared, his own face unconsciously flushed. Anyway, you just don't want me to get hurt, right? Cha Taejeong did not deny it. Huizio lifted his hand and tapped his own collarbone. Then, bite here. Since I belong to Uncle, you should leave Uncle's mark on me. Only then will I behave. Seeing that he was still hesitating, Huizio couldn't help but urge him, hurry up and bite me, just like what I do to you every day. Cha Taejeong lowered his head and bit down on his own shoulder blade. But Huizio was not satisfied. Are you fooling around? That's not called a bite. You just smeared your saliva on it. It doesn't hurt at all. Harder. Since it's your body, yet it got hurt without your permission, it deserves to be severely punished. Under Huizio's instigation, Cha Taejeong finally increased the force and bit down. When Huizio asked him if he liked it, Cha Taejeong's emotions were subtle. I don't know. Huizio shrugged off his shirt, his whole person looking drunk, his face flushed. Try one more time and you'll know. 3,000 words are omitted here. Late at night, Cha Taejeong was already fast asleep. Huizio quietly got dressed and went downstairs. He took an apple and walked into the kitchen. But then he caught a glimpse of the teeth marks on his hand. No matter how he tried, he couldn't suppress the curve of his lips. He put the apple down. He walked over to the safe. Inside lay a gun stained with blood. Huizio's gaze gradually sank, cold as ice. The blood on this gun belonged to Jong Inbyum. Jong Inbyum, who was currently holding Uncle hostage, let out a muffled groan and turned his head, only to meet Huizio's bloodthirsty eyes. Huizio looked at him as if he were already a corpse, and in the next second, simply and decisively pulled the trigger. 1 second, Uncle had just left a little hickey on Huizio, and the next second he was already figuring out how to run. Even more outrageous is, this uncle actually had a girlfriend in the past. Gwak Yunsong is in charge of investigating the case of Jong Inbyum's murder, so she goes to see Han Juwon. Jong Inbyum's phone, the one that was burned, has already been repaired. The phone still contains the record of his contact with Cha Taejeong on the day of the crime. If you want to get the next one, come to this address. But at the crime scene, they didn't find anything related to the documents, and the link in the message was deleted 30 minutes after Jong Inbyum died. Gwak Yunsong concluded that the killer deleted the link. Fortunately, a backup of the link was found on Cha Taejeong's computer. As she spoke, Gwak Yunsong shook her head and set a password for the file. Han Juwon stared blankly at the blinking cursor in the password field. He tried everything that had to do with Taejeong. And none of them worked. What on earth is the password? Suddenly, a trace of luck he shouldn't be harboring surfaced in his heart. Han Juwon typed in his own name. The wrong password prompt popped up, and he couldn't help cursing himself for being stupid. He had even tried his mother's birthday. Who else could it be? Who is really the one Taejeong keeps in his heart? He suddenly thought of Gwon Huizeo. But what has that kid ever really done for Taejeong? How could it possibly be him? Until the screen once again popped up, incorrect password. In that instant, Han Ju-in actually felt a bit happy inside. But he quickly came to his senses and cursed himself in his heart for being useless. This was still not the time to relax. What exactly had he missed? Han Ju-in forced himself to recall. The photo of the two of them on the desk yanked him straight back to high school. Back then, he had learned archery for Cha Taejeong, cut off contact with that old group of delinquent friends, and rushed to the archery club as soon as school ended. But every time, he could only hit the 7th ring, never managing to touch the bullseye. And Cha Taejeong, on the other hand, was hitting the 10th ring almost every time. Han Ju-in grabbed him and asked the reason, but Cha Taejeong's answer left him stunned. Because you want to hit the bullseye too badly. When the wind blows, the arrow will drift. At that moment, you have to deliberately aim a little off. Can't you anticipate it? But the deviation was different every time. Han Ju-in exploded on the spot. He never thought that something like anticipation could also count as a talent. But Cha Taejeong just burst out laughing. That's not it. Your mindset is what matters most. You have to be more decisive. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Even if you think that direction is wrong, in the end it might turn out to be right. Han Ju-in stared at that confident look on his face, and his own face unknowingly turned red. His eyes were like they could glow. He couldn't help it. He wanted to reach out and touch Cha Taejeong's face. But as soon as he approached, he was startled by a woman's voice. That girl called out Taejeong's name, smiling happily, and even waved at him. Cha Taejeong immediately turned and walked toward the girl. I'll go chat with her for a bit. See you in a while. Han Ju-in lowered his head to look at his own hand, standing there in a daze. What was I just trying to do? He watched the two of them chatting very happily. Han Ju-in couldn't help asking who she was, but Cha Taejeong looked utterly surprised. Gang Sin-young from our class? You don't know her? But Han Ju-in only wanted to figure out the relationship between them. I do know. Are you very close with her? Cha Taejeong paused for a moment. Oh, we're very close. After all, she's my girlfriend. Han Ju-in was so shocked he froze on the spot. Even his words stuck in his throat. At this moment, Cha Taejeong lifted his eyes to look toward the other end of the chain. From outside the door came Huizeo's urging voice, and only then did he come back to himself. When he walked to the doorway, Huizeo personally helped him change his shoes. The marks on his neck and collarbones were perfectly clear. Cha Taejeong's tone was very calm. Aren't you taking that coat from last time today? Huizeo frowned. Didn't you say that one was really stuffy? But Cha Taejeong said, if I don't wear it, I'll feel a bit cold. Huizeo could only hook the chain back onto the door, then turn around and go inside to look for a coat. Wait for me a second. I'll go get it. Cha Taejeong nodded obediently. Huizeo turned the wardrobe upside down, but still couldn't find that coat. Cha Taejeong looked up, staring at the movement on Huizeo's side, watching him search back and forth for a coat that didn't exist at all. Cha Taejeong's expression became very complicated. It's over, it's over. The Ajushi secretly went to unlock the combination lock to escape, and ended up being caught red-handed by Huizeo on the spot. Through the surveillance, Cha Taejeong watched Huizeo, who was looking for the coat. He suddenly noticed that on the pillar he was chained to, sure enough, there was a camera there too. Has it usually been watching me as well? Why go this far? And there's more than just 1 or 2 cameras. His desire to escape began to waver. He then suddenly saw the car outside the door. He hadn't noticed it while taking a walk. Was it parked behind the house? If there's a car, that means there must be a road. His hope of escape was ignited once again. As long as he got the car key, he should be able to leave, right? His gaze was nailed firmly to the safe beside him. Cha Taejeong was so nervous his throat bobbed as he swallowed. Seeing that Huizeo was already walking over with the clothes in his arms, he immediately panicked and exited the surveillance room. Huizeo didn't seem suspicious. I couldn't find that coat. Will this one do? Cha Taejeong nodded absent-mindedly. Just before leaving, he couldn't help turning back, glancing at the safe again. Meanwhile, on the other side, in order to find the password for the document, Han Ju-in specifically went to see Cha Taejeong's shooting instructor and obtained the contact information for the orphanage. The director said that Cha Taejeong had been in the orphanage since birth, and his parents had never once come looking for him. The more Han Ju-in thought about it, the more something felt wrong, and then he heard that before him, there had been someone who had taken care of Taejeong's elementary school homeroom teacher. When he heard that person's name was Gwon Jong-ae, Han Ju-in froze on the spot. A sudden heavy rain started outside the villa. Looking at the overcast sky, Huizeo's face was full of disappointment. it would probably be hard to go for walks for a while. Cha Taejeong mentioned that Huizio's birthday was coming up and said that when he was young, he would only send cards to Huizio on that day. Why did you do that? Back then you clearly weren't interested in me, so why did you send me gifts and cards on time every birthday? Cha Taejeong felt that birthdays ought to be taken seriously and celebrated. Children's birthdays are supposed to be blessed. But Huizio couldn't empathize. He only murmured in a low voice, "So it seems birthdays are a very important day to you, uncle." Cha Taejeong, in turn, asked him, "What about you? Besides your birthday, are there any other days? Ones that are also special and meaningful to you?" Huizio circled around with his words for a long time, then suddenly leaned in with a mischievous smile. "I don't know why, but the more curious you get, the less I want to tell you. Take a guess, what is the most important thing to me that an ajushi like you ought to know? It's all about you, ajushi." Late at night, when Huizio had fallen sound asleep, Cha Taejeong dragged his chain and quietly got out of bed. He walked up to the safe and tried Huizio's birthday and his own birthday one by one. He even entered ID numbers, but it still said the password was incorrect. What on earth is it? A number that has something to do with himself. But the more anxious he got, the blanker his mind became. Suddenly, his wrist was grabbed. Huizio pulled him into his arms with one hand. Unhurriedly, he pressed in that string of numbers. 38267. It's my mother's death anniversary. It's also the day you and I first met. A number I'll never forget. Not even in death. That was it. This time, the misunderstanding completely blew up. Ajushi opened the safe and saw a blood-stained gun. Huizio's love and imprisonment, in Ajushi's eyes, instantly turned into murder and framing. In that moment, Huizio completely snapped and turned dark. In the dead of night, Cha Taejeong once again walked up to the safe. He tried every possible password, one after another. The safe didn't open, but he was caught on the spot. Huizio held his hand and directly opened the safe. He lightly pressed a kiss to the back of Cha Taejeong's neck and said in a low voice, "If you wanted to know what was inside, you should have told me earlier. I can let you see it anytime." A blood-stained gun. Cha Taejeong's nervousness turned into shock in an instant. "Is this yours?" Huizio's hand quietly slid down to the side of his leg. Cha Taejeong still hadn't realized how serious this was. "Yes, but there are no bullets inside." But Cha Taejeong stared fixedly at that smear of blood. "Where did this blood come from? Have you hurt someone with this gun?" Huizio's lips fell on his collarbone. Yet there wasn't the slightest ripple in Cha Taejeong's heart. He only wanted one answer. "Answer me, Gwon Huizio. Didn't you hear what I said?" When he couldn't get a response, Cha Taejeong anxiously stood up and grabbed his collar in a fist. "Answer me. Did you or did you not use that gun to kill someone?" Huizio stared at his face, excessively quiet. "Jong Inbeom wasn't killed by me. Then why is there a gun here, and whose blood is on it?" Huizio's tone turned even colder, even more distant. "You don't need to know these things." That sentence instantly ignited Cha Taejeong's temper. He slammed that newspaper hard against Huizio's chest. "Then who is the suspect in that news report? Is it you, or is it me? If you kidnapped me because you were afraid of being arrested." Huizio interrupted him in shock. "What are you talking about? You think I killed Jong Inbeom? That I brought you here just to pin the crime on you? Are you serious?" Cha Taejeong stubbornly pressed him, demanding an explanation. "If it wasn't you, then make it clear. Why did you go to the abandoned factory that day? What happened afterward? Tell me everything." Huizio forced himself to speak with difficulty. "I can't say." He avoided Cha Taejeong's stunned gaze. "Is it really that important? I already told you. I didn't kill anyone. Didn't you say you believed me? Was that a lie too?" Cha Taejeong opened his mouth. In the end, he spoke with a look of utter disappointment. "Then how am I supposed to trust you at all? Look at what you've done to me. You stabbed me with a knife and ran away. Then suddenly showed up again 7 years later. And then you put shackles on me. You monitor me, lie to me, and even now you're still hiding the truth from me." Huizio lowered his head, deliberately hiding his eyes. "If I remove the chains and promise you I'll withdraw all the surveillance, will you believe me?" That almost pleading tone froze Cha Taejeong on the spot. "Trust him, then close the safe and walk out of this room. Pretend he never saw anything, that nothing had happened. Go back to the way things were. Eating together, drinking together, and just keep living like that." But in the end, he had still chosen to run. Having come this far, there was no going back. "You killed someone." Huizio stared fixedly at Cha Taejeong, his eyes full of hurt. He forced out a bitter laugh and shoved his emotions down. "You're not taking the bait. Huh, I really didn't expect you to hate murderers this much. Or is your tolerance something you show only to Han Husu? After my mom died without rhyme or reason, my mother also died without rhyme or reason. and even the truth was quietly buried by people like you. Why not Jong Inbeom? That bastard is the one most unworthy of living. If I'm a murderer, then you're a hypocrite, aren't you? Listening to Huizio's accusations, Cha Taejeong instinctively clenched his hand, his knuckles turning white. Anyone who wasn't an idiot could see that Huizio had feelings for him, whether it was lingering attachment or stubborn obsession. And on Huizio, there was still a trace of how he used to be. In that instant, he even felt a little relieved and thought that this time, things might be different. But they still weren't. Maybe they were never meant to meet again. You really haven't changed at all, whether it was back then or now. In the end, Cha Taejeong still chose to leave. He couldn't sink down together with Huizio. I've had enough. Just those few sentences completely pierced through Huizio's heart. At that moment, Han Juwon learned that Taejeong's mentor was actually Huizio's mother. Also, it was found that Gwon Jong-ae and Han Husu went to the same high school. Han Juwon suddenly remembered that cross he had seen in the church. He entered the code from the cross of Gwon Jong-ae into the file password. At the moment he hit the enter key, the file finally opened. It turned out that the uncle had used self-harm as a way to keep Huizio tied to his side. Even if Huizio softly begged him, even if he would just choose him once, the uncle still took advantage of the rainy night and ran away without looking back. That sentence from the uncle hurt Huizio to the core. He stopped arguing and directly dragged the uncle toward the bedroom. After throwing the man onto the bed, Huizio expressionlessly locked the door from the inside. Cha Taejeong pounded on the glass door. "What are you doing? Open the door." No one responded, and Cha Taejeong turned his head to fix his gaze on the table lamp beside him. He swung the lamp at the glass, but unfortunately, it was also tempered glass. The shards directly slashed his wrist. Suddenly, Cha Taejeong had an idea. Huizio closed the safe again. He glanced over the newspaper, then immediately turned back to look at the surveillance feed. That blinding patch of blood red on the screen made his pupils contract sharply. Seeing Cha Taejeong lying motionless on the ground, Huizio completely panicked. He rushed into the bedroom and, at first glance, searched the floor. Then, anxious, he flung the door open and sprinted out. Lifting the blanket, he didn't see Cha Taejeong at all. Huizio was spacing out when a knife suddenly pressed against his neck. "Slowly put your hands behind your back." The uncle's voice carried obvious panic. Huizio laughed. "You're going to stab me with that? You can't even bite off my finger properly, with just that thing?" But in the next second, his hand brushed against the other man's still bleeding wound, and his voice stopped instantly. The uncle urged him again. "Hands behind your back. Hurry up." This time Huizio didn't refuse. Cha Taejeong cuffed his hands with a chain. He dragged a chair over and sat directly facing Huizio. Where was the key to the shackles on his ankles? Huizio had never been willing to believe he would really go this far. "Is this supposed to be some kind of play? Didn't expect you to have this kind of kink, uncle. If you wanted to play this kind of thing, you should have said so earlier." But Cha Taejeong had no mind to banter with him at all. "Gwon Huizio, answer me. Where is the key?" Huizio deliberately dodged the question. "If I don't answer, are you going to stab me again like just now? Whatever. Go ahead and stab me. Uncle, I won't feel a thing." Cha Taejeong turned the blade toward his own wrist. Bright red blood gushed out at once, and Huizio froze on the spot. He snapped back to himself, his voice shaking. "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" Cha Taejeong's expression was terrifyingly cold. "Huizio, I'm not joking right now. The key. Where is it?" Huizio stared straight at that wound. He drew in a sharp breath and clenched his teeth. Above the bathroom ceiling. As expected, Cha Taejeong found the key. He unlocked the shackle on his ankle. Then, unhurriedly, he started tending to the wound on his arm. "Where's my phone?" "You don't have one. You didn't have it when we brought you here." "Then what about the car keys? Isn't there a car of yours outside?" Huizio was utterly defeated, his voice muffled. "By the door at the entryway." Thinking about driving away, Cha Taejeong also planned to contact Han Juwon first. Right now he had no idea what was going on outside, but just as he turned around, Huizio still made a final attempt to hold him back. "Taejeong, just choose me this once. I'm begging you, just this once. Trust me once, please." It was as if Cha Taejeong was seeing this side of Huizio for the first time. He froze on the spot. A fleeting hesitation crossed his face. In the end, for the sake of freedom, he chose silence. He turned his head away, and all that remained was a single bang. The door slammed shut. Huizio knew he had completely lost. He didn't even have the courage to lift his head. The person he couldn't keep no matter how hard he tried had already left. Outside the villa, the heavy rain was pounding down. Cha Taejeong held the car key in his hand. Yet no matter how he turned it, the engine just wouldn't start. In the end, he still lifted his head and glanced once in the direction of the villa. The next second, he no longer looked back and ran straight into the narrow path leading into the forest. Only the lights of the villa were left, shining lonely in the mountains and forests. The uncle escaped. Huizio also completely turned dark. Huizio, who had caught up, used his own life to force the uncle to stay. There was clearly light ahead, but the uncle still softened. In the end, Cha Taejeong was once again locked back in the bedroom by Huizio. After escaping from the villa, Cha Taejeong ran forward like a madman. But the night was too dark. He couldn't see the way at all. He didn't know where he was, let alone whether he had taken the wrong path. Because he was in such a hurry, his foot slipped. He fell into the mud in a wretched heap, his whole body filthy. Even his shoe failed him. One of them came off. There seemed to be a sound behind him. Cha Taejeong's heart tightened, and he turned back almost on instinct. His heartbeat grew faster and faster. He clenched his teeth, turned around, and kept running forward. He didn't even have time to pick up the shoe that had fallen off. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. It was light. As long as he ran there, he would be able to escape. But just as he lifted his foot to dash over, someone suddenly hugged him tightly from behind at the waist. For a moment, Cha Taejeong forgot to struggle. He only heard the person behind him panting heavily. That familiar warmth snapped him awake at once. "Let go! Let me go!" The other person didn't loosen his hold. Cha Taejeong gave a sudden wrench and forcibly shook him off. Huizio was just thrown off. The next second, his wrist was grabbed in a death grip again. Huizio lunged at him like a madman, and no matter what Cha Taejeong did, he couldn't break free. Only one thought remained in Cha Taejeong's mind: escape. Using the strength of his shoulder, he flung Huizio's whole body away with a heavy thud. Cha Taejeong instinctively looked toward Huizio, only to see that a large portion of Huizio's hair was soaked with fresh blood. Cha Taejeong cried out his name in panic. Hearing no response, he scrambled in a fluster to Huizio's side. "Huizio, wake up! You're bleeding so much." His hands were shaking. "I'm begging you, wake up!" Before his hand could touch Huizio's gaze, terrifyingly unfamiliar, fixed unblinkingly on Cha Taejeong. "Taejeong, you still don't understand, do you? You can't escape." In Huizio's eyes burned a chilling obsession. Even though his strength was gone, he still clutched Cha Taejeong's shoulder in a death grip. "If you really want to leave me, really want to run, then kill me and step over my corpse." In the next second, Cha Taejeong was back in that home. "Don't go," came a familiar voice from behind him. Cha Taejeong turned around, only to find that he couldn't make out the person's face no matter what. Yet the voice was full of pleading. "If you take one more step forward, I'll stab it in. I really will stab it. Do you think I don't dare?" Looking at the dagger pointed at himself, Cha Taejeong understood. So it turned out he had gone back to that day, when Huizio, with a sob in his voice, begged him in utter humility. "Please, I'm begging you. Save me. Without you, uncle, I really can't go on living. I want to live too. I also want to live well." This time, Cha Taejeong reached out and took hold of his trembling hand. "It's okay, Huizio. Even if you don't do this kind of thing, even if you don't, the two of us can still go on living." As he spoke, he pulled Huizio into an even tighter embrace. "I will make sure the two of us both survive. No matter what happens, I'll find a way to fix everything." Because of this hug, the knife in Huizio's hand slowly slipped from his grasp. Cha Taejeong did not let go. "So, Huizio, it'll be okay. Everything will get better." Suddenly, a low voice cut him off. "What are you thinking about?" Cha Taejeong snapped back to reality, his eyes still filled with tears. The tears slid down, as if mourning the regret of not having turned back to hold Huizio then. Huizio, pressing down on top of him, couldn't see his expression clearly. His voice was just low to the point of icy. "Thinking of running away again? Why are you crying? Is being with me really so disgusting to you? Disgusting enough to make you cry? Well, too bad. Just endure it. You know very well yourself that all of this is your own doing." The blackened Huizio was truly terrifying. He'd scared Uncle so much he was about to cry himself dry. And as for the devoted second male lead, Han Juin, at this moment he was still replaying the history of his secret crush. In order to get closer to Cha Taejeong, he went to learn shooting, which he didn't like at all. But as soon as he heard that Cha Taejeong had a girlfriend, he immediately gave up training. Han Juin couldn't suppress the disappointment in his heart. It wasn't until after school that Cha Taejeong stopped him. When the training was mentioned, Han Juin turned his head to the side and casually brushed it off. Cha Taejeong thought he had made him unhappy, so he just stood where he was, staring at Han Juin's departing back. As if sensing that Han Juin's mood was sinking, Han Juin suddenly stopped walking. He looked back and saw Cha Taejeong still standing there with his head lowered. On an impulse, he tossed his bicycle aside. The next second, he rushed straight to stand in front of Cha Taejeong. Nervously, he cupped Cha Taejeong's face, and Cha Taejeong froze completely. Not understanding what was going on, he only called his name softly. Once he realized what he was doing, Han Juin's face instantly flushed red. "You kept hanging your head and not saying anything. I thought you were hurt." Cha Taejeong lifted his head and looked at him in confusion. "How long are you going to keep pinching me?" Only then did Han Juin hurriedly let go, his face still red, his words breaking off mid-sentence, as if he had finally realized just how embarrassed he was, as if he had seen right through his guilty conscience. Cha Taejeong rubbed the cheek that had been pinched and, awkward yet serious, spoke. "I was lying when I said I wasn't hurt. You're not going to training because I made you angry, right? If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine too." Han Juin lowered his head and caught that sentence, his voice muffled. "It's not like that. I'm not mad at you. It's because of me." Seeing the expression on Cha Taejeong's face finally relax, Han Juin's heart pounded even harder, as if it were about to burst through his chest. He suddenly understood that he had really fallen. He couldn't help but mutter softly, "I'm done for." But Cha Taejeong thought he was worried about the exam. The next day, when Han Juin saw a girl come looking for Cha Taejeong, he got so nervous he felt like he was on fire. Even his breathing went out of rhythm. It wasn't until Cha Taejeong said they had already broken up that Han Juin finally couldn't suppress that surge of happiness. With Cha Taejeong looking completely confused, he had no choice but to pretend to explain casually, "I'm just in a good mood." Staring contentedly at Cha Taejeong's face, Han Juin thought, "Good thing I didn't confess." Compared to an ambiguous relationship that might ruin what they had, being friends was safer. As long as he could stay by Cha Taejeong's side, that was enough. His carefully maintained secret crush was completely shaken the second the code was entered and the lock clicked open. Han Juin finally saw those two people standing in the group photo from the orphanage. At this moment in the villa, Huizio walked into the bedroom carrying a toolbox. He saw the person on the bed, and his good mood was unusually obvious. "If you keep crying like this, you'll get dehydrated. Stop crying." The uncle on the couch had his eyes covered, and even his shirt was soaked through. Because of that vile presence, he just couldn't stop crying. This was the punishment for the uncle's attempt to escape. Huizio had tormented him for a day and a night. He wanted to use this kind of cursing Chuan method to press the uncle down, to force him to bow his head and admit his mistake. But in the next second, Huizio very patiently helped him bandage the wound on his arm. It didn't seem like he was trembling. Wounds take time to heal. Before they're healed, it's best not to move around. He lowered his head and pushed it in further again, still making lewd jokes with his mouth. Using the weakest setting, you should feel it's not too bad. Cha Taejeong, whose hands and feet were tied, held back with all his might and didn't make a sound. Huizio kept his eyes lowered, staring fixedly at his face. In the end, he couldn't hold back. He reached out and touched him. "Does it hurt? I can untie you. You just have to say you won't do that again, that you weren't really trying to escape. It was only a reckless impulse, a mistake. Say it and I'll loosen the ropes for you." Cha Taejeong opened his mouth, speaking with a trace of defiance. "I never should have met you. Whether you're dead or alive, I should never have gotten involved in your life. Whether you're dead or alive, I should never have gotten involved in your life. Meeting you is the greatest mistake of my life." This wasn't what Huizio wanted to hear, but he hadn't planned on caring anyway. "It's all right, we still have plenty of time. If you want to be willful, then be willful. I'll always be right next to you, watching you." At this stage, public support for Han Husu's political career remains very high. But her son, Han Juin, took the initiative to seek out Guak Yunsong, who was in charge of the criminal case. He even unreservedly revealed what had been decrypted from Cha Taejeong's computer, a file of records about an orphanage that had almost vanished 40 years ago. It turned out that Jong Inbyum and Gwon Jong Ae had also grown up in that orphanage. Guak Yunsong was taken aback. "Gwon Jong Ae? Is she Gwon Huizio's mother?" Han Juin was a little surprised. "You know Gwon Huizio?" Guak Yunsong nodded, but what she cared more about was this orphanage. Han Juin guessed that Cha Taejeong had already contacted people from the orphanage side before. Judging from the information he had left so far, the people in the photos were either dead or missing. Is this really just a coincidence? Guak Yunsong felt that Cha Taejeong probably thought the same as she did. So she changed her wording, correcting what she had said a few days ago. "I came to you, not to investigate Cha Taejeong's disappearance. I'm here to investigate the serial murder case at the orphanage." According to her speculation, the last victim in this case was Jong Inbyum. Maybe Cha Taejeong was the only witness, so it's very likely that he was taken away by the main culprit. In the villa, Huizio had no idea how many cups of tea she had drunk. The uncle sounded like he was about to reach his limit. "Gwon Huizio, answer me. I know you're right there. Only then did Huizio stop drinking her tea. Having heard no response at all, Cha Taejeong spoke weakly. I want to go to the bathroom. Did you hear me? Huizio only gave a soundless little laugh. Cha Taejeong grit his teeth in anger. He used all his strength to inch toward the edge of the bed. Seeing that he was about to fall, Huizio stood up and grabbed him in his arms. Why do you want to go to the bathroom? Do you need to pee? Talk, I can help you with it. Still getting no response, Huizio lifted his eyes to glance at the clock. The time was just being dragged out like this. Cha Taejeong suddenly felt himself being lifted from the bed. In the next second, Huizio set him down on a chair. Huizio gave him no chance to struggle. It's just you and me anyway. Don't be afraid. Just take care of it here. I'll clean everything up. Tonight, Huizio was completely out of his mind. The older man was bullied until he almost had no tears left to cry. The older man just wanted to go to the bathroom, but Huizio held him on the chair, forcing him to relieve himself right there. Cha Taejeong could only think that he really had gone mad, and he was still struggling, trying to stand up. In fact, Huizio truly was half crazed. He clamped his arms tightly around the older man's waist, repeating over and over, I'll clean everything up. The person in his arms was still struggling desperately, yet Huizio was unervingly calm. Want me to let you go to the bathroom? Then take back what you said just now. Those words about meeting me being the biggest mistake of your life. Cha Taejeong ground his teeth in fury, but in the end he still chose to compromise. I take it back. Is that really the kind of thing you want to hear? If that's the kind of false words you want to hear, then I'll say them for you. They're just meaningless lies anyway. These few sentences instantly froze the hopeful heart Huizio had just a moment ago. He suddenly forced out a smile. He untied the silk ribbon covering Cha Taejeong's eyes. You're right. We're both lying anyway. What's the point of keeping up the act any longer? What's the point of acting anymore? So let's not talk about that first. I'll let go of your hands. After this, endure it yourself. That rough, out-of-control movement was like smashing out all the dissatisfaction in his heart. On the chair, by the window, and only then finally to the toilet. By the window, and only at the very end to the toilet. Cha Taejeong cried and begged him to let go. But Huizio made Cha Taejeong pick the place himself. In the end, in an utterly humiliating posture, Cha Taejeong relieved himself. Even if what the uncle used to coax him with was a lie, Huizio was still willing to listen. But Cha Taejeong wasn't even willing to lie to him. The uncle cursed him through his tears, called him a bastard, and said he regretted it even more, regretted trusting him, even for just 1 second. Huizio quietly listened to him vent, listened to him say he would never believe him again. Yet there was a ball of unspoken fury pressed down in his heart. He scooped him up whole and threw him straight into the bathtub. You'll never believe me again? What on earth is that supposed to mean? Huizio brushed his bangs back, the smile on his face strangely complicated. You never believed me in the first place anyway. After saying that, with a heavy sense of oppression, he also stepped into the bathroom. That matter, I'll give up on it tonight. Your words can't hurt me like that, so let's change our strategy. You're really good at lying, saying you'll stay by my side, saying I'm precious. Did you know that? Even if it's an obvious lie, as long as you keep saying it, one day I'll believe you. Maybe by then I'll want to let you go. Huizio was provoked to the point of completely losing control. But the older man was tormented for days and nights. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and raised his hand to slap Huizio across the face. Those beast-like days continued for several more days. Cha Taejeong's gaze was ashen and lifeless, seeing no end in sight. Let me out. How long are you planning to hide like this? Do you really think the police can't find this place? It's not too late to let me out now. I'll take care of all of this. Huizio raised his hand and gently stroked his face. Cha Taejeong reacted as if he'd just heard a joke. Are you still not sober? How are you going to handle it? You were so scared you were shaking at the sight of the gun in the safe, turning around and running away. Do you think I'd believe such a clumsy lie? As he spoke, he used his actions to force him to stay. Just keep sinking like this and go on living this life of drunken dissipation. Cha Taejeong was completely ignited by those words. He raised his hand and slapped Huizio across the face. Huizio froze on the spot. Cha Taejeong cursed him for being insane and got up to leave the bathroom. Huizio just stared fixedly at his departing back. On the other side, when Han Juin was talking with Gwak Yunsong and learned about the serial murder case, his first reaction was to look into Huizio. It seemed as if Gwak Yunsong had already investigated. She pointed it out directly. Huizio had lived abroad for 7 years, and her address in Korea was unclear. Moreover, the possibility of Huizio being the killer was very low, because the first victim was killed 15 years ago. Back then, Huizio was only 12, so there must be a secret hidden behind Huizio's mother's death. And if someone wants to keep that secret, The only way is to silence everyone who knows. As she spoke, Guak Yunsong asked again about that file on Cha Taejeong's computer. But Han Juan said that Cha Taejeong had never mentioned it. When Guak Yunsong pressed further about the file's password, Han Juan was stunned on the spot. He did not tell Guak Yunsong that the password was the name Huizio's mother used at church. He only replied vaguely, "It's a password that only family members would know." After saying that, he immediately found an excuse to leave. But his heart, for a long time, did not return to its place. Through the window, Guak Yunsong stared at his back as he walked away, as if she had long known that he was hiding something. Meanwhile, in the villa, that middle-aged man was once again bound to the bedroom by chains, dressed in Huizio's clothes, which hung off him absurdly loosely. Huizio suddenly tossed over a set of clothes, speaking briskly, "Get up, get changed." I thought about it and realized I really hadn't gone out for a long time. Cha Taejeong let out a sigh and, in the end, still turned his face away. "Forget it, I don't want to go for a walk." But Huizio told him, "It's not a walk, it's taking off your handcuffs and shackles and going out for a drive." Cha Taejeong couldn't believe it and stared fixedly into Huizio's eyes. Huizio gave a small laugh. "Only now am I letting you off the hook. I'm gonna blow dry my hair, you grab your coat." Cha Taejeong changed into that well-fitting suit. Hearing footsteps, Huizio turned his head and looked him up and down. "It's been so long since you dressed like this. You're really beautiful. So, shall we go out?" This kind of attitude from Huizio only made Cha Taejeong even less able to see through him. Clearly, Huizio had promised to take the uncle out for a drive, but once the car started moving, he accidentally caught feelings. The uncle, whose only thought was to escape, just happened not to want to go back to the villa. So Huizio simply and openly took the uncle to Migik Beach for a date. He swept a glance around the secluded surroundings. This little village was the last place Gwon Jong-i had lived. In his mind, Cha Taejeong was rapidly calculating how to find someone, how to shake off Huizio and call for help. But he also knew very well that with his strength, it was absolutely impossible to wrest the car away from Huizio. Huizio acted as if he hadn't noticed anything, his tone very natural. "I haven't gone out in a long time. How are you feeling?" The uncle only nodded perfunctorily. Then the uncle said he was hungry and wanted to eat. Huizio glanced at him. "There's a restaurant nearby." But the uncle was now a wanted suspect, and his emotions suddenly surged. He grabbed Huizio's wrist in a flash. Uncle Ding gripped even tighter, his voice anxious. "Just cover my face with a hat or something." But Huizio agreed very straightforwardly. "Sure. So what do you want to eat?" The uncle froze for a moment, a bit surprised. "Just going to a nearby convenience store is fine." Guak Yunsong investigated the orphanage from back then, but strangely, no one knew who the director actually was. They couldn't find any clues even from Han Juin's contacts. But Guak Yunsong still had people keep an eye on him. He also remembered how the higher UPS had suddenly ordered the investigation into this case to be halted. He'd been so angry that he argued with his superior on the spot, and the documents were flung all over the floor. The next second, the tip of an uninvited guest's shoe stepped on one of the files. Guak Yunsong looked up and met Han Husu's smiling face. She looked as if she had already investigated Guak Yunsong from top to bottom. Every word she said seemed to be reminding him, "Don't cross the line." Meanwhile, on the uncle's side, he finally managed to catch sight of the convenience store sign. Huizio suddenly stopped and wouldn't go any farther, and Cha Taejeong even thought maybe the car was out of gas. But Huizio said instead, "It's too much trouble. I'm sorry. I can't take you to the convenience store." Seeing him hemming and hawing, the older man thought Huizio was deliberately making things difficult. But then he saw little Huizio. The older man was stunned on the spot. "When did it start?" Huizio explained awkwardly. "I thought I could hold it in, but as soon as I saw you dressed like this, it was like he had suddenly gone back to the past." He was so excited he was about to lose control. After saying that, he was about to turn the car around and go back, planning to cook for the older man himself. The older man didn't want to give up the chance to escape, and instinctively grabbed Huizio's hand, forcibly stopping him. "As long as you just take care of that problem, it's fine, right?" But as soon as the words left his mouth, the proposal involving Miss Five Fingers was rejected by Huizio on the spot, because there were no spare clothes in the car at all. Face burning red, the older man still suggested an even more unspeakable method. Huizio stepped on the gas, and the car sped up even more. Looking down at the older man from on high, he curled his fingers and gently pinched the older man's ear. "It's just passing by another car, that's all. Don't be scared. Keep going." The older man was almost completely covered in marks. Huizio really hadn't shown any mercy. He had clearly said he was taking the older man out for a drive, but they ended up messing around in the car until it was dark. Partway through, someone suddenly knocked on the car window, urging them to move the car. The older man was so nervous he covered his own mouth, not even daring to breathe loudly. Huizio was just about to say something to send the person away, but then he unexpectedly discovered that, "Why won't you let me drive the car away?" The way the uncle covered his lips and held himself back completely threw off Huizio's rhythm. The man thought there was no one in the car, muttered a couple of words, and left. The uncle finally let out a sigh of relief, but Huizio just smiled, both wicked and sexy. "All right, now focus your attention here." That focus lasted until dark, and the convenience store the uncle was heading to had long since closed. But Huizio ate to his heart's content. It was a pity, sure, but he could just come again next time. "Don't look back. Let's go home." The uncle's thought of escape fell through once again. His whole body felt drained of strength, and he slumped in the passenger seat. Right now, Han Husu was at the height of her glory. In her maiden home, her presence even overshadowed her older brother. She didn't even spare a glance at the woman handing her water. She walked straight toward Han Juin. Han Juin had been watching her every move and went straight to the point. "What name do you use at church?" "Among my classmates, there's someone called Guanzhong Ae. Do you know her?" Han Husu sized up her son and paused before speaking. "I know her. She's Huizio's mother." Han Juin was taken aback. She actually knew Huizio as well. Han Husu spoke as if in passing. "I met her when I was having a meal with Taejing. I only later found out that his mother likes using the same surname." "Why are you suddenly asking this? Did Taejing say something to you?" Han Juin was even more confused as to why she had shot the question back so quickly. Han Husu immediately put on a worried look. "Zhang Ai is Taekyung's elementary school teacher. Maybe because of that, Taejiang has always been fixated on Zhang Ai's death. Didn't you know he's been investigating it all this time? The prosecution has been leaking things outside, and it reached my ears. Honestly, why is he doing all those useless things and dragging so many charges onto himself?" Han Juin thought of Guak Yunsong's warning. The files in the notebook must be kept secret. Otherwise, Taejiang's safety could not be guaranteed. He began to suspect his own mother, especially when his mother smiled while talking about Taejiang's investigation, and with one light sentence, described Taejiang's actions as self-destruction. And that woman who handed over the water clearly knew even more of the inside story. Her relationship with Han Husu was clearly not simple. She was staring at that debt collection text message on her phone. The woman's gaze slowly shifted to the business card next to it. Little Husu back then was really too cute, but after growing up, he turned into a maniac with an exploding sense of possessiveness. Even though he still had such a baby-faced look, the nun put a new sweater on little Husu, so he also drew one on the tree in his picture. The sweater was very warm, so why didn't mom say a single word? At that time, Guanzhong Ai's mental state was already very bad. Only Husu and the uncle's car were parked under a billboard. Have you ever thought that your whole life you've been making the wrong decisions? Even at the very moment of death, you're still making the wrong choice. When on earth will days like this finally end? Is there really such a thing as a terminal station? Listening to this conversation, the uncle suddenly fell into his memories. He remembered himself back then, riding the bus all the way to the last stop. He was only jolted into waking up by the ticket collector and then hurriedly got off the bus. In the lively orphanage, the sound of children roughhousing was everywhere. Cha Taejiang was in a fluster taking care of children younger than him. There were just too many of them, and not every one of them was obedient. There would always be one or two that were especially difficult to handle. Forcing down his emotions, Cha Taejiang first comforted the girl who had been bullied. The next second, he started blaming himself again, feeling that he hadn't taken good enough care of them. The director's voice suddenly rang out, startling him. "Taejiang, what happened?" He coaxed the little sister who had been bullied with some candy until she calmed down. Then he turned to the director and said, "It's nothing. Nothing happened. Taking care of children is, by nature, an exhausting task." The director had always seen everything with her own eyes. Just as Cha Taejiang was about to go back to his room, the director suddenly called out to him. The director handed him some money and asked him to stay here until the end of the month. That amount of money was enough for him to rent a room for the time being. Taejiang even thought that he must have done something wrong, and that was why he was being driven out. The director began to explain to him, "There are too many abandoned children." The director couldn't hold on any longer. She couldn't bear to drive away the children younger than Taejiang, so she could only do this to him. Even though Taejiang was clearly the one being cast aside, he still turned around and comforted the director instead. "Don't cry." Only then did he understand. Even if there are no truly bad people in this world, everyone will still end up becoming very unfortunate. When Taejiang was about to leave, he ran into that mischievous boy again. The boy stared at his gloomy expression, clearly a little scared, but Taejeong raised his hand and gently ruffled the boy's hair. He forced out a slight smile. "Don't run around anymore. You'll get hurt. Even without your brother, you have to live well." Cha Taejeong turned around and left under the boy's confused gaze. Dragging his luggage, he walked out of the orphanage. His eyes were filled with exhaustion and confusion, but he didn't fall apart. Instead, he started to cheer himself up. "Wake up, Cha Taejeong, you'd have to live on your own after graduating high school anyway. This is just a bit earlier. With this money, go find a part-time job, then find a place to live. It's okay. Cha Taejeong, don't break down." The uncle who became a canary no longer had any light in his eyes, and Huizio, who hid him away, was still constantly uneasy, torn between gain and loss. On the way back from the movie, the uncle fell asleep. It was pouring outside, and it was too dangerous to keep driving. Huizio had no choice but to check into a hotel for the night, but the sleeping uncle kept dreaming over and over about those unfortunate times in his past. After leaving the orphanage, he went to work part-time at a fast food restaurant. There, he unexpectedly ran into Song Hyun, the one who had bullied him as a child. Remembering how, as a child, Song Hyun had taken away his most precious handkerchief, Taejeong's gaze instantly tightened, full of vigilance. What he hadn't expected was that Song Hyun actually bowed his head and apologized first. He even proactively invited him to live together. The people living in that place were all kids who had come out of the orphanage. Maybe it was because Song Hyun's attitude was too sincere, so Taejeong still nodded and agreed. Huizio pulled the uncle into his arms, moving very gently as he laid him on the bed. While drying his hair, he kept staring at the uncle's sleeping face, unwilling to look away. What filled those eyes was more than just fondness. The uncle looked to be in a deep sleep, his breathing steady. In his dream, the uncle followed Song Hyun and walked into that place where they lived. He really did see many children from the orphanage, huddled together as if to keep warm. They were very enthusiastic, crowding around to welcome the uncle. But the one who had invited him, Song Hyun, only drank his beer, his gaze glued firmly to him. When the uncle woke up the next day, he thought he was going to be late for his part-time job, but the girl reminded him, today is the weekend. The uncle hadn't yet let out that held breath when his hand felt only emptiness at his side. His heart jumped again. "Have you seen my bag? The blue one?" The girl froze for a moment, then remembered that Song Hyun had taken it just now. The uncle's whole body went rigid in an instant. He ran out after him, only to see Song Hyun's face drained of color. So flustered he didn't dare lift his head. The uncle snatched the bag back, but the money inside was gone. Song Hyun turned and ran, and the bit of hope the uncle had also snapped with him. He once again got on that same bus. The uncle clutched the bag in his arms, as if he'd been thrown back into helplessness all over again. He so wished that he, too, could have an endpoint. Huizio stared at the uncle's face, and as he stared and stared, he fell asleep. When he woke up again, the person in front of him was gone. Huizio panicked at once. He thought the uncle had left. He turned around, only to see the uncle's back out on the balcony. The uncle only turned back when he heard the shout, a lit cigarette between his fingers, his face completely expressionless. There was still lingering fear on Huizio's face. He reached out his hand and pleaded in a hoarse voice, "Let's go home." The uncle whose chains had been undone actually didn't run. He even instead took the surveillance and the bug and stuffed them onto Huizio. Poor Huizio had finally grown up, learning to push himself down for the uncle's sake. In the morning, the uncle had a fever. When he opened his eyes, he saw Huizio giving him physical cooling. He braced himself to sit up, only then realizing the chains on his feet were gone. Even if he was afraid the uncle would do something foolish, Huizio still talked tough. "The door is locked. The chain is loose, but you still can't run, so the uncle shouldn't overthink it." The uncle noticed that Huizio was holding a briefcase and was dressed especially formally. Huizio said he had to go out for a while, and even specially reminded him to eat on time and take his medicine on time. But the uncle suddenly called out to him, "Huizio, have a safe trip." That one line directly stirred Huizio's heart all over again. He almost instantly turned around and wrapped his arms around the back of the uncle's neck, dropping a restrained and tightly suppressed kiss. And it just so happened that in this very moment, the uncle quietly slipped the surveillance device into Huizio's briefcase. The uncle stood in front of the window, staring at Huizio's car as it drove away, and became even more certain Huizio was hiding something from him. In his despair, the uncle was desperate for an answer. Did Jong In-beom's death have anything to do with Huizio or not? From the moment Huizio got into the car, the uncle had already started monitoring him. What came through the phone shocked the uncle. there was actually a fax machine in this villa. It sounded like he was working on some kind of merger and acquisition, yet it didn't feel like he was at work. It seemed that Huizio had been working from home all along, but the uncle had never seen him actually work. But the surveillance was too far away, and the later parts of the conversation were getting harder and harder to hear. The uncle could only keep staring at the monitors, trying to figure out where Huizio's office was. In his panic, his hand slipped and he pressed the wrong button. The next second, the uncle's whole body froze. Wait a minute, this sound. This isn't me. At this moment, Huizio had already arrived at Han Sehui's company and was attending the shareholders' meeting. Meanwhile, on Han Juin's side, since he couldn't get anything out of that scrapped car, he simply went straight to the company to look for Han Sehui. But as soon as he reached the entrance, he was stopped by security. Even though he insisted, "I'm here to see my family," they still refused to let him in no matter what, until the office door was pushed open from the inside. Han Juin looked up and saw Huizio. He rushed over as if he'd lost control, slammed Huizio hard against the wall, and grabbed him by the collar. "You bastard!" After discovering that the uncle had been listening in on him, Huizio actually laughed. A very pampering, very gentle laugh. Just moments ago, Huizio had still been secretly pleased with himself. But when he got home, he found that the uncle had fainted in his secret little room. The uncle had never imagined that there was actually a hidden door behind the bookshelf. The moment he went in, he was stunned by the scene before him. The screens were filled with all kinds of analyses, big and small, densely packed. There was also a bottle of medicine placed on the desk. The uncle couldn't tell what kind of medicine it was. He could only guess it was probably something Huizio was taking. He wanted to keep searching to find more clues. But then he saw a photo of himself in the computer, with a glaring red X drawn over it. Right after that, he found another file named Han Husu. Inside was footage of his adoptive mother being kidnapped, with a note saying, "The teacher's death is related to her." The person on the other end said coldly, "The one who was supposed to die was her." The next second, a line, "We have a guest," came through, and the conversation was abruptly cut off. The recording also ended there. The uncle had just stood up when his vision suddenly went black. Damn it, felt like he had a fever. Gritting his teeth, he raised his hand, wanting to check one more time. But as soon as his hand touched it, the medicine bottle was knocked over, and he collapsed weakly. Han Juin pinned Huizio against the wall, staring him down and pressing. "Where did you take the uncle?" Han Sehui didn't want to offend this god of wealth, so he could only have his people restrain Han Juin first. With one sentence, Huizio directly stopped his struggling. "I'd like to ask you instead, up to now, what have you actually done?" He had always stayed by Uncle's side, yet knew nothing about him. Only asking these things now was already too late. From now on, he would just keep living like this, going on without understanding anything. Just like before. While driving, Huizio suddenly glanced at the briefcase. He reached in and took out the listening device. He froze for a moment, then actually smiled with a hint of fondness. He lifted his eyes and looked toward the rearview mirror, only to see that Han Juin had followed him all the way. As expected, Han Juin still lost him. When Huizio returned to the villa, he unexpectedly didn't see Uncle. He instinctively rushed into the room to look for him, but accidentally discovered that the secret room door was open. As soon as he entered, he saw pills scattered all over the floor. The next second, he completely panicked. Uncle had actually lost consciousness and collapsed on the ground. That fainting spell from Uncle scared Huizio so much that he went cold. He hurriedly rushed him to the hospital, but as soon as Uncle woke up, he had the nurse call someone for him. By the looks of it, he was planning to escape. And in the box with the handgun that Guak Yunsong received, inside there was actually a little origami cat. In the past, Huizio had made an agreement with her. Whenever he needed her help, he would also fold this kind of little cat. At the same time, the forensics department also sent over a report. The report showed that the ballistic marks on the handgun were exactly the same as those on Zhang Inbiam's arm. They also detected traces from an unidentified woman. What's even more coincidental is that when they opened the kitten, inside were the letters of the name of the adoptive mother's younger sister's company. On Huizio's side, he also came clean with Han Sehui and laid it all out directly. She cooked the books and also embezzled. He also made it clear with no room for negotiation. If she wants to keep the management rights, she has to turn herself in and say that she killed Zhang Inbiam. Huizio will keep it secret for her and will also help her. Han Sehui has absolutely no intention of turning himself in. He only wants to buy time and slowly wipe out all the evidence of embezzlement. But he didn't expect that Guak Yunsong's investigation would come knocking first. In the hospital, Huizio stared at the uncle lying on the bed and grew more and more uneasy the longer he looked. The next second, a nurse suddenly called him over to register some information, and at that very moment, the uncle on the bed slipped into a dream of the past. In the dream, Na was in class when his nose suddenly started bleeding without warning. He went to the infirmary to take care of it, and unexpectedly, Han Juin followed him in as well. Han Juin asked him point blank, "You're working a part-time job because you're short of money, right? I can give you some." Those words instead made the uncle feel very uncomfortable. The uncle replied coldly, "Then how much can you give? Can you give me 100 million? Han Juin was stumped on the spot. The uncle only felt humiliated, so he turned around and left, clean and decisive. Later, because of a group project, the two of them were assigned to the same group, and the next day the uncle went to his house to deliver the report. Han Juin kept staring at him and asked straight out, "Don't you have anything you want to say to me?" The uncle paused for a moment and countered, "What is it you want to hear me say?" Han Juin was pushed so hard by him that his temper flared up, and just then his foster mother happened to come out. The uncle immediately put away his emotions and politely introduced himself. The foster mother then asked him, "Where do you live? Are your parents doing well?" When she heard that both of the uncle's parents had passed away, the foster mother instead took the initiative and said, "Then come live at my place." The words came too suddenly, and Han Juin's face flushed red all at once. That long-lost warmth pierced straight through the uncle. His eyes burned, and he actually started to cry. Both the foster mother and Han Juin were stunned, and the uncle hurriedly explained, "I don't even know why I'm crying." But the foster mother smiled very gently. "Silly child, you've had it hard, haven't you? You must be tired. It's okay, you're not alone anymore. Just treat me as your mom." The uncle felt a sour ache in his chest, but he still earnestly accepted this kindness. In a low voice he promised, "I will never forget this kindness." The next second, the uncle jolted awake from the hospital bed. He lifted his hand and grabbed the nurse's wrist, using a lot of strength. "Phone. Can you let me make a phone call?" In the end, the uncle still ran away, and the hope Huizio had been clinging to completely died. The good news was the foster mother was arrested. The bad news was the uncle personally pushed away Han Juin's kiss. Before Han Sehui had time to figure out a way to destroy the evidence in Huizio's hands, she was taken away directly by Guak Yunsong, for she saw that familiar handgun at a glance. Instinctively, Han Sehui thought Han Husu was trying to frame her, and in a panic she confessed to everything. It turned out that the person in charge of picking up Zhang Renfan on the day Han Husu took him out was Han Sehui, and this gun was also supplied by Han Sehui. Although that car has already been scrapped, Han Sehui still holds the black box from the car in his hand. On the day of canvassing for votes, under the lenses of countless reporters, Han Husu was handcuffed on the spot by Guak Yunsong. But Han Husu was so arrogant that he actually threatened Guak Yunsong directly in front of everyone. Fortunately, Guak Yunsong only gave a faint smile and said she had long since gotten used to it. And the last time Han Juin saw Uncle, he still reeked of alcohol. Relying on the courage from the alcohol, he finally dared to lean on Uncle without any scruples. He told Uncle that he had seen the application form on the table, and that only now did he learn what had happened between Uncle and his mom. He asked Uncle why he hadn't told him, and asked what he really counted as to Uncle. Uncle didn't answer. He only said to call a taxi to take him home. Han Juin was trembling with grievance. "Since we're no longer family now, then what on earth are we? Without you and without the company of family. I'm really sad," he said, and leaned in to kiss him. But Uncle pushed him away. "Go back, Han Juin. You don't understand, Han Juin. You don't know anything." Since then, Han Juin never saw the uncle again. Huizio's questioning words have also been replaying in his mind up to this very moment. "What exactly did you do by Taekyung's side? You don't know anything about him at all." Han Juin regretted it countless times. If he had grabbed Taekyung back then, would Taekyung not have disappeared? Suddenly, the ringtone sounded, something Han Juin had never even dreamed of, that he would receive a call from the uncle. His whole body instantly tensed and then collapsed. He was so excited he was on the verge of tears, and he spoke a lot of concerned words in a row. But the first thing the uncle said was, "Where's Mom? Is Mom still alive?" When he heard "still alive," the uncle immediately told him to listen carefully. Right now, use the number he gave to search, and then come pick him up immediately. He was not allowed to call the police nor to tell Mom. He could only come alone quietly. After speaking, the uncle did not give Han Juin any chance to respond and hung up directly. Fortunately, Han Juin soon locked onto Maguk Hospital. After registering at the nurse's station, Huizio practically dashed toward the uncle's hospital bed. He yanked open the bed curtain, only to find it empty. Huizio's expression instantly darkened to pitch black. But in the end, the uncle still chose Huizio. Clearly he could have escaped, yet he took the initiative to reach out and grab Huizio. It turned out that the stab Huizio gave him 7 years ago had left the uncle with severe psychological trauma. Every time he dreamed, he would see Huizio. After waking, even though the wound had long since healed, the spot where he was stabbed still hurt unbearably. The doctor asked him, "When you recall that incident, what is the first emotion that surges up?" Unable to find the uncle on the hospital bed, Huizio searched for him all over the hospital as if out of control. His whole demeanor was so grim it was terrifying. Meanwhile, the uncle was still at the nurse's station calling Han Juin. Yet he repeatedly warned, "Don't tell anyone and don't call the police." Drawing quite a few curious looks, the uncle had no choice but to hang up in a hurry and turn to run away. He remembered that year in the hospital, the moment he saw his adoptive mother successfully beat cancer. Back then, he was genuinely happy for his adoptive mother. After hanging up, Han Juin rushed straight to the hospital. When he inquired at the nurse's station, they said there was no patient named Cha Taejiang. Suddenly, he looked up and saw that familiar back on the stairs. Han Juin's expression lit up at once, an uncontainable delight. The uncle was still sunk in his memories. He had gone to check with Jong Inbeom. When Jong Inbeom saw the photo with a cross drawn on it in the uncle's hand, he was completely stunned. "Are you not afraid? You might die, you know that, right?" Only then did the uncle understand. This photo was declaring that he was the next target because the orphanage he had investigated was entangled with things far too deep. Jong Inbeom said he had only found out by chance as well. He just hadn't said outright who the killer is. But from what the two of them said between the lines, the suspect was already practically named, and the uncle still couldn't bring himself to believe it. Jong Inbeom handed him a USB drive, telling him to go verify the truth for himself. The moment his eyes fell on that group photo, the uncle was completely stunned. Breaking news. On the screen, the report of the adoptive mother's arrest was scrolling, and Seo Ju froze on the spot. He remembered that, after confirming things with Jong Inbeom, he had personally gone to find his adoptive mother, who had already recovered. At this moment, the uncle could finally answer what that stab 7 years ago had felt like. He had nothing left but anger. He stared at his adoptive mother, who was chatting and laughing with Han Juin, and forced out through clenched teeth, "How can you still be so calm? Someone died." Han Juin didn't understand what he was talking about, but the adoptive mother did. The uncle did not explain, because this surge of anger was actually aimed more at himself. By the time Han Juin rushed to the stairwell to look for him, she discovered that the person there wasn't the uncle at all. And on the other side, Huizio, who was frantically searching for the uncle, suddenly had his arm yanked by someone. When he turned his head, he met the uncle's face, so panicked it had gone pale. "Where did you go just now?" Huizio had never imagined a scene like this would ever happen. Not only did the uncle take the initiative to grab hold of Huizio, he even lowered his voice to beg him, "Stay by my side." Huizio thought the uncle wanted to run away, but it turned out the uncle was afraid that Huizio would be seen by others. Looking at the uncle, who had willingly revealed himself, Huizio instead felt a bit dazed. "How long have you been here? No one followed you, right? You've seen Han Sehue, haven't you? What did you do to her?" It wasn't until a louder wave of murmuring suddenly rose nearby that the uncle's expression instantly changed. Flustered and anxious, he grabbed Huizio and headed out, saying they were going home. When he heard the word home, Huizio finally reacted. Only when he heard the uncle once again confirm, "This is home," did Huizio abruptly stop. His mind went completely blank. He could only blankly follow the uncle forward. After they returned to the villa, the uncle came clean directly. He had watched the video of Huizio kidnapping Han Husu. "The abandoned factory in the video, that's the place where you and Jong Inbeom stayed, right?" After Huizio nodded and admitted it, the uncle immediately pressed him. "Why didn't you report your adoptive mother as the real culprit?" Huizio said he had no evidence, and he didn't want to make the same mistake again. The uncle asked him again why he approached Han Sehue, and when he heard Huizio say to get evidence, his expression grew even darker. He was worried that Huizio would be stabbed in the back by Han Husu. But in the end, the one who took the fall for others turned out to be the uncle himself. And precisely because of that, the uncle wanted Huizio to let him go, so he could go find the uncle and set things straight. But Huizio didn't trust the uncle. Han Husu had done so many bad things, yet was still alive to this day, never having been punished. It was as if the uncle suddenly understood something, so shocked that he lost his voice. "From the very beginning, you never meant to expose Han Husu, did you?" Huizio admitted it, and the uncle panicked at once. "Then what were you trying to do back then? Kidnapping Han Husu? What did you want to do?" Huizio said nothing, but in his mind flashed back to the scene of kidnapping Han Husu that day. Because he had never planned to let Han Husu leave alive, The only reason he didn't pull the trigger right away was that he wanted to first find out the real cause of his mother's death. Huizio did not explain and turned to leave, and the uncle hurriedly chased after him. "You're not finished. Where are you going?" With his head lowered and his voice very soft, Huizio said he was going to finish what he hadn't finished. The uncle was completely thrown off. "You really want to kill Han Husu?" Huizio did not deny it. In this world, there are always people and things that must be eliminated. Han Husu is one of them. The uncle didn't run after him. He just stared fixedly at his back, his voice so low it sounded like he was begging. "Don't go. It's not because of Han Husu. I just don't want you getting dragged into that kind of thing. Not for anyone. If you really do that kind of thing, I'll fall apart, even though I don't really know what it is you want to do. But just don't do it. Don't go. I'm begging you." These words are way too sweet, aren't they? The uncle immediately saw Huizio sitting by the bed. "Not sleeping yet?" Huizio's hand paused over the book. "I can't sleep. You should sleep a bit more. It's still before dawn." The uncle suddenly caught sight of the medicine on the table. "What's that?" "I heard it's sleeping pills." The uncle tensed up at once. "You have insomnia?" "Why?" Huizio lowered his eyes. "When I fall asleep, I sometimes have nightmares." That sentence made the uncle breathe a sigh of relief. He hadn't expected Huizio to be trapped by nightmares. He was already this grown, after all. The uncle told Huizio to go somewhere with him tomorrow. Once they arrived, the uncle immediately started looking for the box he had buried. After finding it, he handed it to Huizio. "Open it and take a look. 7 years ago you hung your scarf here and left. I kept wondering, would you come back? Your 20th birthday present. I bought it back then, but I never got to give it to you. Even though it's late, happy birthday, Huizio. No matter how much I regret it, how much I want to turn back time, I still can't go back to that moment. All I can do is gather up the broken pieces of myself and keep on living." After they returned to the villa, the uncle became especially clingy, even though his high fever still wouldn't go down. Every time he woke up, the first thing he did was make sure Huizio was still by his side, and he even made Huizio promise to stay with him forever. Huizio didn't know how many times he had agreed, and he had always held that promise very tightly. Until that morning, when the uncle woke up and there was no Huizio beside him. He panicked at once, didn't even bother to put on his shoes, and rushed out barefoot to look for him. It just so happened that at this moment, Huizio had just finished buying groceries and was on his way back. The uncle's cheeks were flushed, and he was in complete disarray. The moment he saw Huizio, his panic instantly collapsed, replaced by a relieved smile. "Where did you go? I couldn't see you." Huizio didn't answer. He just stared straight at the uncle's now dirty feet. The next second, he strode quickly to stand in front of the uncle. Before the uncle could react, with pity still on his face, Huizio directly hoisted him up over his shoulder. Back at the villa, Huizio personally washed the soles of his feet. He washed them so carefully that the uncle started to feel embarrassed. Not until Huizio had dried his feet and then saw the normal reading on the thermometer did Huizio finally speak his first sentence. "The fever is completely gone. You don't have to take any more medicine." Seeing that Huizio was about to turn and leave, the uncle instinctively grabbed his hand. "Are you going somewhere again?" Huizio deliberately joked that he was going to have an affair. Seeing the uncle's expression tense up in an instant, he finally told the truth. "I went to the market to buy groceries." The uncle spoke in a very serious tone, as if giving an order. "From now on, wherever you're going, let me know first. Even leaving a note is fine." Huizio froze for a moment, then smiled. "Got it. My master, I would like to go to the restroom, may I?" This sentence made the uncle's scalp tingle. "Don't use that weird form of address. And you don't need to ask me about that kind of thing anymore either." Huizio muttered in a low voice. Obviously, it was the uncle who had told him to do that. The uncle felt even more awkward and could only push him away. At night, Huizio sat by the uncle's bed, keeping watch as he slowly drifted off to sleep. But the uncle just couldn't fall asleep. Holding Huizio's hand, he asked him to talk about his days in Germany. Huizio said there was nothing much to talk about, but the uncle looked very serious. "All the better, it should be even more sleep-inducing then." Huizio said that in Germany he had met his still-living biological father. His father hadn't even known he had a son before, but they were only reunited for half a year, not even enough time to build up any real bond. After his father passed away from illness, Huizio went to the United States, where he obtained a lawyer's license and then threw himself into work. That was Huizio's life after meeting his wealthy father. As soon as he finished speaking, the uncle suddenly raised his hand and ruffled his hair. "You've got so many worries. You must be exhausted." That one sentence scalded Huizio. Something in his chest suddenly loosened. He immediately put on a pitiful act. "It's really been tough. I cry every day. But the uncle exposed him right away. Seeing that the uncle didn't fall for it, Huizio turned the tables and asked the uncle about his own life over these years. Cycle on repeat, cutting off contact with his mother, working, going to therapy. When he heard that the uncle went to therapy because of him, Huizio instinctively assumed it was because the man hated him. But the uncle said it wasn't hate, it was missing him. That sentence made Huizio's pupils suddenly shrink. When you first came, you said you hated me. You even went on a hunger strike. The uncle was a bit speechless. Anyone would react like that if they were suddenly shackled by you. Huizio said the uncle was his first love, then asked if it was the same for the uncle too. This question made the uncle's body give a small tremor. That reaction showed the uncle was lying, and it made Huizio remember that the uncle was so much older than him. So Huizio just went with it and accepted it. Getting mad was useless, but he still couldn't hold back his curiosity. How many were there? Exactly? 1 or 2? The uncle agonized over it for a long time, then finally said in a low voice, it might be 5. Huizio was struck on the spot as if hit by lightning, his whole body frozen in place, defenses shattered. Uncle, are you out of your mind? The moment he heard the uncle had dated 5 people before, Huizio immediately tried every way to write his dissatisfaction all over his face. Early in the morning, he deliberately made a whole table full of desserts. Then, under the uncle's shocked and doubtful gaze, his tone was dripping with sarcasm. You used to eat like this a lot with your girlfriends too, right? The uncle replied awkwardly, suddenly feeling that the cake in his mouth wasn't sweet at all. After the meal, Huizio deliberately put on some music and read, every lyric line stabbing into the uncle. It just happened to get to that line. I'm sorry for those days when I belittled you. Kusyang, forgive me. The uncle finally couldn't hold it together. Are you going to keep playing songs the whole time? Huizio pretended to be nonchalant. Yeah, they sound pretty good, so what is it? Is there a problem with the lyrics? The uncle was even more speechless. No, that's not what I meant. Even after he crawled under the covers for a nap at noon, the lyrics kept drilling into his ears. In the afternoon, the uncle wanted to find the book he'd been reading yesterday. He found it, and the instant he opened it, he fell completely silent. Taming the Playboy Young Master, Taming the Playboy Radishes. But inside the book cover it actually was. At night, the uncle came out after taking a shower. At a glance, he saw Huizio lying down with his back to him. Huizio, hey, are you asleep? Huizio still ignored him. Only then did the uncle confirm. Huizio really was angry. My dating was all when I was a kid, and it was very simple. Usually we only dated a few days, and it ended as soon as I got dumped. After hearing the explanation, Huizio just muttered one line. Philandering wanderer. When you were in school, did you ever like anyone? Answer, no. Surprised? Other than the person I liked. Huizio was speechless. Isn't that obvious? Huizio was still angry. When he was done being angry, he started sighing again and again. In the end, he sat up and said in a fit of pique, do you think that after I go abroad, I'll date other people at the same time? The uncle clearly didn't believe it, and even praised him, saying he was pretty impressive. The uncle hesitated for a long time before coaxing him seriously. I haven't been in a relationship with anyone for 7 years. Huizio's gloomy mood instantly cleared. The uncle blushed, a little embarrassed. I just thought about you dating someone else. Huizio, however, said coldly, I don't believe that at all, unless the uncle proved it to him. When they opened their eyes in the morning, they could see each other's sleeping faces. The uncle and Huizio started to become sweet as well. Unfortunately, that lingering foster mother was going to stir up trouble again. As soon as he opened his eyes, he could see Huizio's sleeping face. The uncle smiled in satisfaction. He looked up toward the window. It was actually snowing. The hardworking uncle got ready to clear all the snow in the yard. It really had snowed heavily last night. The uncle suddenly heard hurried tapping sounds behind him. When he turned around, he met Huizio's panicked gaze. Afraid the uncle would run off again, Huizio had rushed out without even having time to put on clothes or shoes. In such cold weather, the uncle was stunned. Why do you look like this? He suddenly noticed that Huizio was barefoot and couldn't help but laugh. Looks like this time I'll have to wash them for you. Watching Huizio stride toward him, the uncle was still explaining on his own. The front gate was blocked by piled up snow, so I came to clear it. I've already cleared half of it. No sooner had he finished speaking than Huizio hefted him up over his shoulder. The uncle was still unconvinced. Wait, I've put my shoes on. Let me carry you over. Huizio headed straight back. What a joke. Just like that, the uncle was forced to wrap his scarf tightly inside the house, while having to listen to Huizio's non-stop nagging. You're really not afraid of the cold, going out to shovel snow like that? You only just got over a cold a few days ago. You sit here and watch TV? I'll do the rest of the shoveling." The uncle stared at the cartoon on TV until his face went stiff. Does he take me for a 7-year-old kid? Through the window, he happened to see Huizio shoveling snow outside. As if sensing the uncle's gaze, Huizio actually looked up in this direction. The uncle instinctively dodged out of sight, even though he himself couldn't say why he was hiding. Thinking of yesterday's dessert party, the uncle simply decided he would make breakfast. But the moment this thought popped up, his attention was yanked away by the TV news. The uncle was listening with full attention, and just then, Huizio finished shoveling and came back. The TV was still broadcasting. The current prosecutor identified as a suspect is Han's adopted son. The police stated that the likelihood of him being an accomplice with Han is low. Meanwhile, another son of Han is currently missing. The next second, the TV was suddenly turned off, and the uncle's heart jolted violently. He saw the remote control in Huizio's hand, and his whole body panicked in an instant. Immediately after, he spoke with a guilty conscience. "Want some breakfast?" Huizio just looked at his back and didn't say a single word. At this moment, Guak Yunsong obtained the dashcam footage from Han Suhui's car from the day Zhang Inbium was murdered. The navigation records also confirmed that Han Husu had indeed been to the crime scene. In response, Han Husu merely smiled faintly and still did not say a word. No matter how Guak Yunsong pressed her with questions, she continued to choose silence. The only thing she opened her mouth to say, however, was something completely unrelated. "Officer, what do you think? At what point in a person's life can it finally be considered complete?" Suddenly, Han Husu's lawyer was notified to come in, and Guak Yunsong felt her heart sink. Now it would be even less likely for her to talk. They still couldn't get in touch with Han Juin, so Guak Yunsong could only press her subordinates to check his spending records. As long as a person is still alive, they're bound to spend money. No sooner had she said this than she ran right into the section chief's gaze. Guak Yunsong instinctively gave a little nod, but the section chief kept staring fixedly at her, and even after Guak Yunsong had walked far away, that gaze still followed her, refusing to let go. Only after they had completely left did the section chief's eyes drop onto the dashcam video disc from Han Suhui's car. "It's over. Uncle has noticed the wound Huizio's been hiding on her wrist all this time. This time he's truly, utterly furious." The case involving her foster mother, which should have been wrapped up, was overturned and reversed yet again. And the one who stepped in to help her just happened to be the superior whom Guak Yunsong admired the most. Bak Hansok stared at the photo of him and Guak Yunsong together for a very, very long time. In his mind, he replayed what Guak Yunsong had been like when she first joined the team. In those eyes was written nothing but trust in him and admiration. But in the end, he still flipped the album face down on the desk, until the frantic, panicked Guak Yunsong burst in. "Chief, where's the black box video?" But he pretended not to understand, so Guak Yunsong stated it directly. The black box from Han Suhui's car was missing. Not only did he coolly say he didn't know, he even scolded her in return, telling her she'd been absent-minded all day. That made Guak Yunsong so angry she started to tremble. "Why has the section chief become like this? You weren't this kind of person before. Did you make me a detective just so I would see this side of you? I honestly feel ashamed. I actually admired you for a while." When she finished, she slammed the door and left. Once outside, she immediately arranged for the team members to keep a close watch on the section chief. She decided to investigate Han Juin's matter herself, and the more she thought about it, the more certain she became. There must be some unspeakable relationship between the section chief and Han Husu. The matter of his foster mother had become a thorn he couldn't pull out of his heart. Standing by the stove, he completely zoned out. In his ears, his foster mother's words sounded again. "Taejayong, from now on, you're going to live with my family. You only need to remember one thing. Keep this firmly in mind. I really hate cowards." The suddenly overflowing hot water yanked him back to reality. He reached out to pick up the kettle, but the steam had already rushed up and scalded his hand first. He let out a muffled groan, and his hand suddenly went slack. Fortunately, Huizio reacted extremely fast, rushing over to shield him, and the boiling water ended up splashing directly onto Huizio's hand. Huizio's hand was scalded red, and only then did the uncle come fully to his senses. He immediately pulled him over to the sink and ran cold water over it. The water rushed down, and the uncle suddenly saw something stuck to Huizio's wrist. He reached out to peel it off, but Huizio pulled his hand back and said in a low voice, "It's fine now." The uncle grabbed his wrist back again, tightening his grip on his arm. "Let me see." Huizio looked very troubled. but he couldn't go against the uncle. In the end, he had no choice but to sit down obediently. The uncle directly tore off the cover on his wrist. The next second, he saw densely packed scars. How did this happen? Huizio only said they were scars left from before, but the uncle wouldn't let it go and insisted on getting a clear answer. When? The uncle remembered that when he woke up 7 years ago, Han Juan had said that Huizio hurt himself and then ran off. Huizio admitted it, but he said that at that time he had gone abroad. The uncle couldn't understand. Then what was this supposed to be? If that's the case, why did you hurt me? If you hurt me, you should at least stay alive. Why would you do something like this? Huizio said it was because he couldn't obtain forgiveness. The uncle was stunned on the spot. No matter what the reason is, I almost killed uncle, so I should be punished, even if I didn't succeed. Don't worry, next time, before I cause uncle's death, I'll die first. Hearing this, the uncle's expression instantly darkened, and he suddenly stood up. He glared fixedly at Huizio. His eyes filled entirely with anger. He was so angry that he actually wanted to sleep in a separate room from Huizio, only because he didn't want to lose his temper at him. But Huizio misunderstood and thought the uncle was going to abandon him. From the day uncle suddenly got angry all on his own, while Huizio was outside shoveling snow. Uncle no longer stood by the window looking down at him. That made Huizio even more flustered. During the meal, Huizio asked Uncle where he had gone that morning. Uncle said he'd been sleeping, but in the past he had always gotten up very early. Huizio pressed on, asking if he'd gone to bed too late the night before. Uncle fell silent on the spot because he didn't want to bother with him. Uncle stayed silent, as if too lazy to say another word, and turned around to leave. Huizio panicked at once. Was that it for the meal? He hadn't even finished half. Uncle only tossed out, "No appetite," and went straight back to his room. It wasn't until evening that Huizio realized Uncle had actually brought over a new set of bedding. What was he doing? What did he need the bedding for? Uncle hugged the bedding and walked out, not even sparing him a glance. From now on, I'll sleep in this room. You go sleep on the second floor. Huizio suddenly pressed the door shut. Why? Uncle seemed to have made up his mind not to look at him. If you insist on sleeping on the first floor, then I'll go to the second floor. Huizio clutched the doorknob with all his strength, afraid of being shut out. That's not what I meant. I'm asking why you want to sleep separately from me. Uncle forced his emotions down and explained, I don't want to see your face right now. Let's sleep separately for a while first. Nervous, Huizio pressed down on his wrist. Don't hide from me. I hate you the most when you're like this. Uncle didn't feel he was avoiding him. I'm just desperately holding myself back so I don't lose my temper at you. Huizio would rather be scolded by him. You don't have to force yourself to show that kind of restraint. Just get angry at me directly. You can yell at me or hit me. Just lose your temper at me somewhere I can see it. Is it because I said something like, I want to die, that you became like this? To be honest, I don't even know what you're mad about. I almost got you killed, so what I mean is, if something like that ever happens again, even if you say it's suicide, I'll definitely stop you. The uncle's fists were shaking with rage. How could you talk about death so lightly? Have you ever thought about the teacher who died? And what about me, the one left behind in this world? Even if you hate me, I have never once hated you. Even if you hurt me, I have never once resented you, because I don't want to become like that. Do you think this is easy for me? For me, I have to believe my life has value, because my life was raised and nourished in the teacher's love. Even if that land disappears, I will keep standing without falling, because that is the only way I can prove the existence of the teacher's love. As he spoke, he suddenly grabbed Huizio's sleeve. You have to understand that your own life has value. You can't give it up so easily. That would be the worst kind of betrayal. If you did that, everything would become meaningless. Seeing the uncle like this, Huizio's heart throbbed with pain. I'm sorry, I was wrong, so don't make that face. In the end, the uncle still broke down and cried. He didn't know how long the grief of losing someone important would take to finally fade. Would there ever be a day when he could truly escape from those memories? Maybe for his entire life, he will never escape this chain called guilt. So he wants to hold on tighter to the person in front of him. If the police can't find us, let's go abroad together. Going to America is fine, going to Germany is fine too. Even some unknown little island would do, as long as you're there, as long as we're together. Even if I completely fall apart, it doesn't matter. At this moment, Han Juan, whom the police had been searching for, drove alone into the forest. Bluish stubble hung from his chin, and his wretched state was written all over him. He recalled the final conversation he had had with Uncle. He slowly took a slip of paper out of his pocket. It was what Uncle had asked the nurse to pass on to Han Juan. There were only 4 characters written on the note. Forest Villa. As for Uncle's 5 exes, Huizio could remember them for a lifetime and would even bring them up every Christmas to tease him sourly. But right now, the two of them are truly sweet together. Unfortunately, the adoptive mother, this big villain, has been released again. One of Gwak Yunsong's team members obtained the abandonment records from the orphanage. Most of the children had multiple records of adoption and abandonment, at least 5 times, and some even as many as 11. And the reason they were abandoned was always the same. The adoptive parents died, although most of the deaths were written up as accidents. But even if it were coincidence, there are far too many. A team member suddenly leaned in close to Gwak Yunsong's ear and lowered his voice. But Chief, the person connected to all these dead adoptive parents is, when he heard who that person was, Gwak Yunsong's eyes shook violently. But the team members still didn't dare draw a conclusion. They needed to dig deeper. Just then, a team member suddenly rushed in. He told Gwak Yunsong they couldn't get in touch with the detective in charge of tailing Bak Hansok. Even the person lying in wait at Bak Hansok's house couldn't be reached. When he learned that Bak Hansok had also missed work without reason today, Gwak Yunsong was completely stunned. Meanwhile, over on Huizio's side, when he texted to ask if help was needed, Huizio flatly refused. With his head lowered, he kept searching. Suddenly, his gaze stopped on a gift box. Inside was the diamond ring he had prepared for Uncle. Huizio, still haven't found it? Uncle urged from outside, and only then did Huizio snap back. Found it? I'm coming out now. While decorating the Christmas tree with Uncle, Huizio couldn't help saying, it feels like this is our first time spending Christmas together. But Uncle responded quite calmly, didn't we decorate a Christmas tree before? Huizio replied softly, that was when Mom was still here. Uncle told him he had decorated Christmas trees many times. When I was a kid, I lived in a group home, and we celebrated Christmas every year. On Christmas Day, donations would pile up, and all he remembered was being busy the whole day without a break. At night, the final task was to get the Christmas tree all sorted out. But such a beautiful tree had to be taken down the next day. What a pity. So I often put it off until late at night and don't put them away. Just sit alone and look at the Christmas tree, treating it as a Christmas present for myself. Huizio looked at him and asked, in the donated items, aren't there also gifts that are yours? The uncle said, those are all communal things. They don't have the feeling of belonging only to me. So Huizio said directly, then don't put it away this time. Leave it there until you get tired of looking at it. Even though that was all from when the uncle was a child, Huizio didn't want him to feel that this kind of gentleness was rare or extravagant. You said it before, didn't you, uncle? That you hoped I could have you without paying any price. Huizio paused. Me too. I hope you can enjoy everything I give you. Don't feel burdened. Huizio's voice was very soft but very firm. Just take it as, this is a right you deserve by default. The uncle suddenly raised his hand and gently placed a 5-pointed star on Huizio's head. Huizio said thank you, but his tone was very serious. But I really don't mind. I only want one thing, something that won't disappear even after Christmas is over. Huizio twisted the knife again. What you just said really makes you sound like a player. The uncle was instantly embarrassed and hurried to explain. I already said it's not like that. That thing last time is already over, isn't it? But Huizio was still sour and tense. You've never spent Christmas with a girlfriend, have you? The uncle immediately changed the subject. How about we turn on the lights on the tree? Where was the outlet again? Huizio stared at him. You're very suspicious. As soon as he finished speaking, the phone in his pocket suddenly rang. Huizio immediately made an excuse. I'm going to the storage room to get a power strip. Meanwhile, Gwak Yunsong finally found Hyung-yu at the hospital. Only then did he learn that while Hyung-yu was tailing Bak Hansok, he had been hit by a car. Hyung-yu was frustrated that he had lost the target, but Gwak Yunsong was simply relieved. As long as you're okay. When he called to inform the team member Jong Min, he heard even worse news. Han Husu had been released. After stabbing the Ajushi, Huizio had tried to kill himself more than once, but every single time the nurses discovered him in time. During that period, Huizio was filled with the stench of death, to the point that he could barely even think about the idea of wanting to go on living. The only thing keeping him going were the memories related to the Ajushi. Ugh. Bean sprouts are not tasty at all. Why does Ajushi eat such horrible food every day? The Ajushi merely said, don't be picky. You need a balanced diet if you want to grow taller. Yet Huizio's height was already about to catch up with the Ajushi. The Ajushi gave a little laugh. You've still got a long way to go. Huizio stared at him and suddenly blanked out. Why did he happen to remember these ridiculous, foolish little things? It turned out that it was precisely these trivial, everyday moments that had forcibly carried Huizio to today. The Ajushi was the reason his life kept going. After losing the reason to go on living, Huizio finally learned how to keep on living day by day. This year, she rarely gets to spend Christmas with the uncle. That uncle who used to never crack a smile now has become a bit more childish. No, that sentence just now doesn't count. Huizio tells the uncle to answer seriously, but the uncle says he's already answered. What the answer is, of course, depends on the mood of the person answering at the time. Huizio doesn't let it go. Answer properly. Why do you like me? The uncle's face turns very red. She doesn't know if it's the alcohol or something else, but he seems to think very seriously about it. You're too noisy. Huizio is stunned. Me? Am I really that noisy? The uncle quickly explains that it's not the kind of noisy that Huizio thinks. I grew up in a group home. I've seen a lot of kids like that, and I'm very good at calming noisy kids down. You're louder than any kid I've ever seen. You're more than any kid I've ever seen. You're on a different plane. Huizio can't help cutting in. Hey, are you insulting me? The uncle tells Huizio to keep listening to him. At first, I only paid attention to you because I was uneasy. At the beginning, I really only paid attention to you because I was uneasy. You'd say you want to die at the drop of a hat, you wouldn't listen to me, and you'd throw a huge tantrum whenever something didn't go your way. I had no idea what to do with you, but I don't know from what moment it started. All of your cries were actually saying, I want to live. And I heard them, even though I don't know why that put me at ease. But I think that's probably when I started to fall in love with you. But the way you are now, I can't really read you anymore. Your thoughts are too hard to guess. The uncle's expression suddenly turned very serious. Huizio, right now, do you still want to go on living? In an instant, it was as if he had gone back to those days. The days when the uncle was on a ventilator. But now it was different. His mindset was completely different. The uncle finally relaxed, and drowsiness surged up with it. All right. Honestly, I'm just so relieved. You are not allowed to leave me and die, you hear me? He said, closing his eyes as he spoke. He was still mumbling. You are absolutely not allowed to betray me. It was clearly the dead of winter, yet Huizio felt it was impossibly warm around him. He gently lifted the sleeping uncle into his arms. He laid him on the bed and carefully pulled the covers over him. Huizio sat beside him, murmuring softly, You probably don't know. You've saved me so many times, even in the most ordinary, tiniest moments. Because of you, it felt like I was pulled back. Huizio took out the diamond ring he had prepared long ago. He moved very gently as he slipped the ring onto the uncle's ring finger. You taught me how to keep on living, so I'll give you peace and stability, no matter the cost. When Guak Yunsong heard that Han Husu had been released, she practically went crazy rushing to the prosecutor's office. But as soon as she heard this was a case personally handled by the director, Guak Yunsong froze on the spot. She lost focus for a second and ran straight into a wall of flesh, falling to the ground and clutching her nose. But when she saw clearly who was in front of her, she froze once again, because the person connected to both the orphanage and her deceased foster parents was the chairman. And the chairman just stared at her coldly, with not a trace of warmth in his eyes. Even after that person had gone far away, she still hadn't come back to her senses. Suddenly, everyone's phones popped up a message at the same time. Guak Yunsong's gaze was nailed to the real-time news. At dawn yesterday, Chief Park of the Incheon Police Station. At dawn yesterday, Chief Park of the Incheon Police Station, international oil prices and the oil-producing countries agreement saw the biggest changes in 3 years. He was found dead in his own home, in the house of Officer Park. He left a suicide note admitting that he was the one who killed Jong. Prosecutor Cha, once regarded as the prime suspect in this case, and politician Han have been officially cleared of suspicion, and the politician Han has also been deemed free of suspicion. In the end, Huizio still disappointed uncle. He, who killed his foster mother with his own hands, is now of uncertain life or death. Uncle looked as though he himself were about to break apart. The one who pulled his foster mother out as expected was the chairman. The chairman said that the last time Han Husu disappointed him was already 18 years ago, and this time he sent Han Husu to her mother's side to live quietly, as if she were already dead. This was, as a father, the last thing he said to her. After the car drove off, Han Husu stared for a long time in the direction it had gone. Cha struggled desperately to reach out, and Su drooped in utter dejection. Her memory rewound to the day she killed Jong Inbeom. The injured Jong Inbeom questioned her, Didn't you say that all we had to do was kill Cha Taejeong? Then why was that bastard Gwon Huizio there too? His foster mother pulled the trigger. Sorry, but the next target isn't Taejeong. Before Jong Inbeom could get an answer, the sound of the gun being cocked scared him so much he didn't dare move. Before Jong Ae died, you were the one who hid that kid away, right? Just how much did Jong Ae find out from you? Jong Inbeom explained in a panic. He knew nothing. He wasn't a traitor. and there was no way he would do something that stupid. Let me see, father. I can prove I'm not a traitor. Only then did Han Husu reveal her true purpose. I know star. But it's precisely because of that you're even less acceptable. Han Husu pulled out a pen and viciously crossed out Jong Inbeom from the group photo. Next, there were 3 left. Han Husu let out a soft sigh and was just about to start the car. But she found that no matter what she did, the engine just wouldn't turn over. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught someone in the rearview mirror, and cold sweat broke out on the spot. Huizio, dressed in a perfectly pressed suit, was sitting quietly in the back seat, not saying a single word. Han Husu forced out a near-breakdown smile. Ha! This is insane. The next second, her car erupted in a violent explosion. The uncle dreamed once more of his foster mother's words. Taejeong, remember, I hate weak people, because weak people will betray you sooner or later. He jolted awake, his heartbeat so chaotic it made him panic. Lowering his gaze, he saw the ring on his ring finger. An indescribable fear slowly crawled over him. Uncle still hadn't been able to find Huizio. He bolted outside as if out of control. So panicked, even his breathing went erratic. His foot slipped, his balance vanished, and he fell headlong into the snow. The bone-piercing cold wind whipped his face. One of his shoes came off, and he couldn't be bothered to pick it up. Uncle went on madly searching for Huizio until a beam of light appeared ahead. That was the exit of the forest. His feet had long since been rubbed raw, covered in wounds. He stepped into the bustling city, as if rejected by the world. People around him cast strange looks his way, and he acted like he didn't see any of them. Uncle just stared at the crowd, desperately searching for Huizio's shadow. Suddenly, a hand clamped down hard on his shoulder. It was Han Juin, his face full of stubble. The moment he saw Uncle's face clearly, he pulled him into a tight embrace. Thank God. You're okay. I missed you so much. Taejeong. Really, missed you so much. But Uncle's eyes were so empty. It was as if he couldn't see anything at all. A year later, Uncle appeared again, impeccably dressed, like a changed man. Facing the reporters' cameras, there was no trace of dishevelment left in him. I am Cha Taejeong, a prosecutor in the Criminal Affairs Department of the Supreme Prosecutor's Office. I will now give a briefing on the Han Husu serial murder case that occurred between 2004 and 2022. The briefing begins now.